Welcome back to the Week 3 SCC EU Qualifier Finals. My name is Dolson, and you are sitting in the consortium of knowledge and good looks, and the man who is supplying both the knowledge and the good looks standing by with me, Gormizer.
That's a weird way to pronounce Dave.
Stop. I'm hosting this one. I say who brings them both to the table, and you're bringing good looks and knowledge to the table for our finals here between Freshly Forged and Optimus Gaming, who was able to, or Optimus Gang rather, who was able to make their way through the last semifinals. You just got off that set with Freshly Forged, finally getting a look at them here in the qualifier sets, and they did not disappoint.
Yeah, it turns out when you take 5 really, really good Smite players and put them on a team, they make a really, really good Smite team.
Yeah.
And the fact that they got pushed to Week 3 is more upsetting, I think, for all the people who they had to go up against more than anything.
Yep.
But Optimus Gang has a lot of names that can potentially compete.
Yeah, and you look, a lot of the success for Freshly Forged in that last set came through that dual lane. Callus and Joshy did not face much opposition throughout those 2 games. Kespainify and Fusify, though, the dual lane for Optimus Gang, they'll have their hands full.
Yeah, and again, you have a duo lane in that has been playing for years together. I mean, they have been in Europe, specifically in the minor league for a long time as well, but they've been making runs like this exactly in this kind of format for years. And like I said, together as a duo lane. You don't actually get that too often, but the fact that they have so much history with each other on several different teams to this route, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do up against the likes of Joshy.
Sure. And this is a fun one because it seems like across the board, there's exciting individual matchups rather to look at. PrettyPriMe, of course, the mid laner for Freshly Forged. He's going to have LeMoGoW on the other side for Optimus Gang to deal with.
And the thing, I like to meme LeMoGoW because every time I think of LeMoGoW, and a lot of people should be this way as well, Hades should come to your mind because that's just a one-to-one correlation for me. A way bigger god pool than that, but Hades is the one that has been going forward. And actually with what we've seen, at least in the last couple of weeks, he's not too outlandish to think of as someone you could pick up. So I'm sure he's absolutely happy to be able to say maybe he could play it over there in the solo lane, or we'll see what happens for him.
Well, I'm very excited for this one to start to bust out. Let's jump into picks and bans and see which direction these teams take this one. As well as FaraKrik. I know that was a guy you wanted to maybe have some notes on going into this matchup. Talk about him a little bit.
Just another guy that's been around the scene for a long time. Again, much like Fusify, Kespainify, and LeMoGoW for that matter, has been playing at this level for years and years and years, has been able to compete with some of the teams that we've seen in the Pro League, but hasn't ever made like a run for the top just yet. This is an interesting spot to see him again. A lot of guys on this team have played together before and are going to, I'm assuming because of the way things have been going now that they're going to the group stage, at least play for another week, probably a little bit longer because of the history they have. And this is probably the closest matchup you'll see. Granted, they've lost twice in quarterfinals, but for Freshly Forged this week, this is one that I think can push them to the limit.
So you still maybe have Freshly Forged as your favorites in this one?
Yeah, it's just so hard to fight against those names. I think Optimus Gang have a ton of experience behind them, but for every bit of experience, you see that and then some on the side of Freshly Forged.
Well, Gore, already some interesting changes in picks and bans up to this point. I would say 5 of those bans relatively standard, but the 6th, not so much. And that opens up the Yemoja for the first pick there for Optimus Gang.
And that feels like a Phi lane, the duo lane that you have coming out from Optimus Gang. That is like their special. Freya has been there in and out for them. And so it feels like something specifically targeting over there. But like you said, leaving Yemoja open, that's huge. I mean, let me just run through it. CC, damage, sustain, and a huge ult that controls things in the jungle. I love everything about her.
Yeah, nothing that you just said was bad. Nothing that you just said was bad, and I would love to have her on my team.
And she's flexible. Like, in the sense that she can go to solo lane or into the duo lane, all right? Let's calm down, chat.
That's right. Well, you're right. She could, every once in a while, maybe you see her in the mid lane as well, but they're going to pick her up this time around. Let's see how the rest of the draft plays out and see where she lands. Pele, though, picked up for Freshly Forged. Maybe an interesting pick there.
We don't get to see a lot of Pele, and I actually really like Pele. I like her kit. I feel like, again, it's not necessarily a is she bad as much as it is there someone who can do it a little bit better.
Right.
A lot of Hunbats has been coming through. Thor has been picked up a lot, but I like the fact that they forego that, go for the Pele. Her ult is one of my favorites audibly that is in the game, which is a weird thing to have about an ult, but you dash in, you get some good damage with cones behind it. Her team fight is incredibly good, and I think with Heimdallr and Geb kind of helping out more than likely in that duo lane, she's definitely available to do a lot of good damage in this game.
Well, with their duo lane locked in, they're going to move to the Ull for their 4th ban out here, realizing Optimus Gang still need to pick into that one. And the Kukulkan banned out for Optimus Gang. Maybe that leads you to believe that the Yemoja or the Camazotz will end up in that solo lane.
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes me laugh about that Hades, because LeMoGoW is the solo laner, and there's only one thing you do against LeMoGoW, and it is ban Hades. I don't think any other team in any other circumstance bans that Hades, but because of the fact that you have someone who is pretty potent on it, on the other side, you have to deal with it. But there's still flexibility. That actually kind of counts on that Camazotz going to the jungle, potentially.
Oh, Apua locked in here as well. What do you make of that?
That is freshly forged. That's a PrettyPriMe special, I'll say.
Sure.
That's like a little star on there where he's just like, you know what? I think we have good control, but also a decent amount. With the sustain they have on Optimus Gang, Opwash has a steal on, or not a steal, a stun on heals.
Yep.
You take those words, or take that word and stretch it out into 2. That is going to be very potent. If Yemoja hits anybody with the sustain late game, Opwash throws out his 3. That is a guaranteed stun. Then you're going to be looking for kills and follow up on that.
Well, a couple low pick rate gods being locked in here. Skadi and Fafnir most recently. Who do you like more here through 10 picks?
Man, with all of that, with all the power Optimus Gang have, I have to go them. Yemoja, Camazotz, Xing. They get 3 of the big ones on their side, and it's enough to make me overlook the Janus.
Well, they've got a hill to climb, freshly forged. They haven't quite been tested here today. Will they be tested in the finals? We'll go down to John Finch and Mifflin to find out.
I think they certainly will be. This Optimus Gang squad, with a lot of what was formerly Flashpoint from last year, is certainly a strong one, but freshly forged has looked plenty strong in their own right. Think on the desk there, Gormizer and Dolson. It's Finch and Mifflin on the cast going to the finals. Our last set of the day, and we're going to get to see an Opwash. I think Gore kind of hit on it there towards the end, that he makes a ton of sense into both the Yemoja, to the Camazotz, to the Xing. There's a ton of healing there, and Opwash is much more of an anti-healer now than he used to be, literally an anti-healer now, as well as obviously the stun on that 3 as well too. So I think this makes some sense in this match to try and cut into what this Optimus Gang draft is trying to do.
Yeah, Opwash can't hit a wrong target with his 3 now because of Yemoja's bouncing heal. Anyone that gets touched will get stunned by Opwash's 3. That's as good as you can get, right? That's short of like a Guan Yu or a Hell. Yemoja is probably the best to pick Opwash into. However, he has to be worried about the walls coming out of Yemoja. He's got no way to get out of it. I'd be surprised if we saw a Phantom come out, but it wouldn't be bad. It certainly wouldn't be wrong.
No, I think you can get away with the Phantom up against, the Yemoja if you feel as though that Rivers Rebuke really has been that big of a problem. I think that was
Did you see that Hawk?
We just saw, yeah. Fusify, I think, is the one that dropped it. I didn't see it in the inventory before he picked it up, but clearly being used here in lane to try and get a little bit of an extra advantage in terms of clearing this lane. It's worked so far. The Skadi and the Xing now have the lane pressure, and Skadi Xing probably won't be given enough.
Look at that poke coming out into Kespainify. Going to take a little bit of damage on a Fusify as well. These two have been playing together for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah, I imagine that they're feeling pretty confident, the most confident any duo has been going into this, but Faeles on the side, blinking in.
An early gank into the knockup. Easy first blood, and they want a little bit more too. Kespainify, though, is trying to zoom on the ice. It's not fast enough. Freshly forged. Make Optimus Gang pay. And when you factor in the Hog, too, and everything they're trying to do to get that early pressure in lane, losing 2 over there and left, that is a brutal start to this game.
That's an awesome start for Pele, however. Being able to back at that time to get boots, too. Her power spike's going to come a little bit quicker. Normally, junglers don't back until they can finish the entirety of their boots, but now that she had nowhere really to go from duo lane, backing was the fastest way to get to any farm on the map. Speed buff spawning, she's a little bit more powerful. It's going to delay that full boots power spike, but not more so than SeregaZek will.
Yeah. Let's just go with Zek, yeah?
Yeah, Zek sounds good to me.
I think that we can make Zek work. I mean, there's plenty to talk about just with that opening start. I mean, that's something you got to be a bit more mindful of. It was a lot of the conversation, right? Does Vision Shard coming into Season 7 mean that there can be no more of these early game ganks, right? That was some of the concern, that maybe there might be too much safety there. But I think we're seeing that there are still some blind spots, still some openings where you can make your way in to find some relevant ganks, especially if the duo lane is looking for too much pressure. And Freshly Forged did a really good job of punishing it there, and they're the beneficiaries now off to an excellent start here this game.
It's worth pointing out that Skadi hasn't used her Vision Shard, though, so maybe had she elected to use that free tool given to you by the game, she might have been able to avoid that gank, but that is a heads-up play from Faeles rotating over there. Now that she's got that early back as well, she can look to immediately hit 5 and then abuse out this Janus in the middle lane. It's a very good matchup. The only escape really is that portal out as well as the ultimate, but you have to be near a wall, so if you get gone on in the middle of the lane, Pele's going to blow you up pretty quickly.
Certainly is, and it can be difficult to get away from Pele even for gods with a few more options available to them, so it's not the easiest thing in the world. We'll have to keep our eye on how Faeles chooses to try and use that pressure. But what are kind of your thoughts on how you feel about Janus' overall strength right now anyway? Because you hear all the time about how he can be fit and consistent. Do you play him a bit more setup and utility, or are you looking for that more consistent damage? I mean, where do you feel about Janus right now?
I'm really glad that you asked, because I need to say it. I'm sick of people picking Janus in any games that I play. Janus is one of the losingest gods, not only because he's difficult to play, but because what he does is less burst than the average mage. Let's hold that thought, though. Geb rolling into his death, perhaps.
Certainly is in some trouble. This is a use of that new Calder ultimate that we thought would be so powerful.
Just barely out.
Did not see as much Skadi as perhaps we thought after that change, but Kespainify is going to force the back from Kalis. Totally might not be here anymore, but I'm happy to call the Totally KO on that one. Is Joshy willing to drop the ultimate, try and get himself out of danger? Not going to be able to find a return kill in the Fusify here, but good work at the very least to make sure he's able to retreat.
But back to Janus.
Yeah, please.
The damage he does on the Unstable Vortex is so hard to confirm, as well as it's not as huge a burst / he doesn't have the CC that even a Poseidon would bring. So if you get setup gods for Janus, he's not going to follow up as well. The maximum damage output he can have is the 1 into the 2, but the 1 removes the enemy god from the playfield for so long that no one else is able to follow up, and it just extends the team fight, allows the enemy team to rotate in after him. I hate Janus, and I'm going to say it now. Gorsity's going to overlook it. I won't. This is a strange pick, especially looking at their comp. They're so team fight focused that Janus is not going to be willing to fit into that, really.
Yeah, I assume Clumsy somewhere is very happy to see this, but I agree, right? I know that Janus is not particularly strong right now, but there's certainly some strong uses for him if you can find good ultimates. As Kalis wants another initiation, they force the beads out to Kespainify. The follow-up damage there too. Even if they don't get the kill here though, that's job well done. They force the beads. Joshy out now. It's only on to Kalis to make the escape. The slow is there, drops the Geb shield himself, and Fusify started to come to the picture as well. Shockwave hits too. Kalis
nice slow.
Narrowly avoids everyone else, gets a little bit of extra peel from Joshy, and they managed to make it out.
If that slow doesn't come through, it allows Fusify to get in there and cancel out Geb's 1. That's a dead Geb. That's heads up from Joshy. Not many people realize that the Horn is so potent, not as only as a self-heal, but as even a chase maneuver, or even for the enemy team to stop them. But Faeles going to look to go into the red buff, gets stopped out by Fusify. You know, it's a slow game so far, but Freshly Forged, even though they're up 2-0, only up about 100 gold, down gold actually.
Yeah, it's actually very, very even still throughout this early game, despite the kill disparity that you talked about already. And I don't know that that's particularly surprising. I mean, Optimus Gang is a seasoned roster too. I mean, LeMoGoW, this used to be Sibby and Johnny when this was Flashpoint, right, with FaraKrik, Fusify, Kespainify. But certainly LeMoGoW, an experienced solo laner too. And I don't know Zek as well personally, but certainly hasn't done anything particularly crazy here for them so far. So I'm not particularly surprised that Optimus Gang are kind of hanging with him.
That's a smart point out from Doug on the camera, but we're going to hold that thought as Cal is getting picked out again, playing so aggressive on this Geb.
Thrown underneath the tower, hit by that through space in time. Kalis
huge
gets the
turn.
Cataclysm off. Now it's a question of if Zek can get back in there and trade things back out. He can to make it 1-for-1, support for support, but Zek ends up getting a kill out of that one on the jungle roll. Not a bad way for that trade to end up going for him to get this Camazotz rolling.
The Chronos pendant on the Yemoja, it's so core on the god, it allows her to have the additional mana, get her Omi back up a little bit more often. However, she's so immobile and so... Oh, Joshy, what are we doing over here?
He should be able to have some follow-up to this as well. Good job kind of positioning where Kespainify
Question mark?
would end up there, but did not quite have enough to finish that kill up. Kespainify makes it back out of there. But yeah, I actually don't have a ton of Yemoja solo builds, kind of ready to go here, but I got to imagine this is a pretty good way to go about it. The Chronos Pendant, the cooldown boots, getting them right away, and then something like Breastplate of Valor, you'd think in this third slot, you want that CDR and mana on there as soon as possible to help with that Omi regeneration for her. So I think this makes sense as far as LeMoGoW's current path.
Normally we see out a Yemoja solo, we go immediately into the helmet, then the cooldown boots, then the Breastplate of Valor, but the fight middle, PrettyPriMe dropped a half immediately.
Already low. Looks like Optimus Gang might have to give up on this one. Fusify took quite a bit of poke too, but nothing too serious happening from this one. River's Rebuke committed.
Nice
Deathwalker
body block.
He is trapped inside it, forced to go into the ultimate. This is Fafnir solo as well, so a couple of maybe non-traditional solo picks, or at least not the ones you normally would see over here right away happening in solo. But nothing wrong with having a Fafnir or a Yemoja on your team, as Deathwalker wants to get some more value out of this Draconic Corruption before he de-transforms, but he is going to de-transform, surrounded by everyone. Through space
Nice
and time,
Janus
hits
ult.
him, not for a ton of damage, and Deathwalker is able to get back out of there with the underhand tactics now. Optimus Gang on full retreat as Freshly Forged want to keep on the gas. Zek has to use the ultimate to try and disengage. How far can he truly run with the rest of Freshly Forged right here? Joshy trying to catch out FaraKrik. The last bit of his mana lets FaraKrik out with the portal.
Joshy is using his teleport so smart. He's the first player we've seen pick Heimdallr and really utilize it properly. He's teleporting a relatively long distance, but not long enough to put it on a longer than 20 to 30 second cooldown. He was trying to catch out Janus there. He might have thought that Janus was He was very close, but had just enough mana to teleport out with his one.
Been good work from him on this Heimdallr so far, and I think that's where the big skill gap is going to be on these Heimdalls, right? How they're using that Bifrost in particularly. I mean, I think that at this point now, hopefully there have been enough PSAs to where everyone knows you're not, Bifrosting from base anymore. It's really those more shorter range ones that you like. But I do think there is some flexibility in terms of where you can use it and try to be in rotating into these fights a little bit more often, and I think Joshy's done that well here so far.
All eyes are on Janus right now. He's up a level against the Opwash. 0-0-1 opposed to the 1-0 on the Opwash, still up a level. And that's the one benefit of Janus you were talking about earlier, is that he can farm so well, rotate throughout the map. But the downside is, what is he going to do with all that farm? He really needs to pull ahead for Unstable Vortex to be that huge of a determining factor in these fights.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is big through space and time value. This is a Gold Fury being started, though, by Optimus Gang. They've got it at half HP already.
Burning
I think
fast.
Freshly Forged are starting to recognize it. Can they get here in time? Faeles makes it
Steal.
in, and they strip it away. Volcanic Lightning starting to rip through the team fight, too. Zek, though, gets one kill to answer back, so it's 1 for 0, but Gold Fury went the way of Freshly Forged, make that 1 for 1 as Joshy cuts down
Joshy ripping
Fusify,
through.
make it a double kill. Kespainify does answer back, as does Zek. They make it a 3 for 2, even though they drop the Gold Fury.
That Gold Fury steal was so good. PrettyPriMe in a little bit of trouble now. He's not that mobile, but he's looking to chase out the fight on the Camazotz.
PrettyPriMe, I don't know about sticking around in this one, but he's off watch. What are his options for retreating? A 4 for 2 in favor of Optimus Gang, though they do end up giving away that Gold Fury that they themselves started. And you can kind of see how that ends up shaking out in the gold charts. Relatively even in gold, but it definitely favored Optimus Gang in terms of experience.
It would have gone even better had PrettyPriMe just decided to walk away. Once he dropped the ultimate, he had free path. Skadi can't chase that easily with her ice down, especially. Joshy, we were just singing your praises, bud. You can't be teleporting from base like that.
Just had to get back in and try and get this farm, perhaps. Maybe he was tried to willingly making that sacrifice on the longer cooldown to get back in there and not miss out on anything, but certainly a risky play. But I like where Optimus Gang's heads are at, right, with that Gold Fury call. That was a great call from them. They very nearly had a chance to get that one, but Freshly Forged kind of had their heads on a swivel, got there just in time to contest it. But then they were in a pretty not great fight, right, afterwards, and it did not quite go their way. So I think Optimus Gang clearly showing they could hang with a really strong roster like Freshly Forged.
Faeles got so lucky with that steal, but he did find all the damage afterward to set up for a decent fight. I think it really did fall towards PrettyPriMe just staying a little bit too long. It would have dropped even instead of going a dip in favor of Optimus Gang, so Freshly Forged reacted just about as well as they could have.
I would say so. PrettyPriMe working on a health option here for his third item. I wonder if that's going to be something like a Gem of Isolation or where he's going to go from here with this path. Don't see a ton of Opwash builds as Joshy and Kespainify take the man fight and left it. It ends up being a 1-for-1. They end up trading. Honorable fight happening there on the left-hand side. You'll love to see it. The mid lane, though, they'll fight without their hunters. Who needs them? Fusify wants to grab one. He does bring Collis back to the Wolves. Tons of damage from LeMoGoW, who's rotating into the fight as well. But Collis remains calm, gets back out of there, actually considers coming back in, look for FaraKrik and pays for it with his life. That was curious.
That was a decision to be made, to be sure. Maybe not the best one. Collis been playing very aggressive on this Geb all set. It's worth noting in that 1v1 in the long lane between the hunters, Joshy still has his beads available. They're not available on Kespainify, so the next ultimate's going to be favored towards Heimdallr.
Good point.
It's going to be rough going back forward.
It's a great point to mention that Joshy will certainly have an advantage the next time they look to battle it out. Those ultimate trades, you're against Skadi in lane all the time. So important. And Joshy that came out the better of it last time as the red buff invade coming through from Optimus Gang. This is more aggression from them and Faeles. Can't find a way out. Fusify gets one more kill. If Optimus Gang are intimidated at all by going against this SPL squad, I cannot tell, man. They are absolutely swinging through the fences. And Zek, beyond the Tier 1 tower, committing to dive on the PrettyPriMe. If you're going to play off Puch into Camazotz, then you're going to have some trouble. Fusify shuts him down. LeMoGoW traps Collis inside the walls. Rivers are
fantastic heals.
A little bit too strong, and they've already lost 3 members. Joshy does find the ultimate, but that is onto a tanky Xing Chen. I don't know if that's the optimal target that he was looking for, and Optimus Gang get out unscathed.
Not only unscathed, but now Joshy's the target of aggression and falls to our boy Zek.
Indeed, he does. I mean, we talked about how maybe there wasn't a whole lot of consistent damage from the Janus, but I don't know, man. These last 2 fights, there's been some consistent damage from this Janus, so if FaraKrik could keep playing it like this, then you won't hear me complaining much more. Optimus Gang have had a really strong first 14 minutes of this game. And remember how this started. They got 2-0'd in duo, basically, for free, and there's still more action happening in the jungle. FaraKrik gets caught out early. Faeles the one that punishes them for overstaying. They have got one more lockdown in the back. That's Fusify. Just when I started singing their praises, they finally start overcommitting a bit and Freshly Forged get right back on track.
I mean, you were right to say they were comfortable, but maybe a little bit too much so.
Right.
They started that fight between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 in mid and just continued it for a full minute and a half at the enemy's speed buff. You're going to find the kills, but you have to know they're respawning and you're on their side of the map. You're going to back out afterwards, spend the gold that you accumulated as a lead. Gold in the pocket is not a lead make. That is what I say.
That is certainly accurate. Perhaps you can make a very tiny argument for Fafnir, obviously, a benefit from it with his passive, but I agree with you 99% there, my man. Ethereal Staff was the pickup for PrettyPriMe. Wondering where that option was going to go. I think this is a pretty smart option for him to pick up here in this slot. I mean, certainly the passive is very strong. I think Optimus can get a lot of use out of that here too.
Especially on the ticks from his ultimate as well.
Right.
That additional survivability is going to help him out with this Camazotz that's been repeatedly diving onto him. That additional health is just going to keep him alive a little bit longer, and he can heal up with his own abilities. But Gold Fury looking to be contested by the side of Freshly Forged. The fight going a little bit longer. Fusify blinking in, finds the knockup on a PrettyPriMe.
And in goes Fusify to try and see what more he can find. Not a whole lot there, though. It's the Oni Fury that's up here this time, and both teams willing to do battle over it. The one a bit more willing than the other, though, is Optimus Gang. They are the ones that have it pulled to try and see if they can force Freshly Forged in. Freshly Forged have the Oracle Vision for now, so they certainly know what's happening on the Oni Fury. It's no secret. They should be able to time this engage
on the back.
well. Faeles is going for the loop around, and Kespainify is a bit of a sitting duck. Now they know he's there. Optimus Gang does get the Oni Fury, but what about the actual fight on the backside? PrettyPriMe is quite low. Can Freshly Forged afford to stick around? But Kespainify gets gobbled up as Faeles finds himself a double. Joshy gets 1-2 as FaraKrik starts to crumble, and suddenly disaster now for Optimus Gang. They've only got the front line left, LeMoGoW and Fusify, as they get shredded by Freshly Forged. 3-0. It's not the worst case situation, but Optimus Gang, again, still a little bit overconfident, just going ahead and pulling it. Fusify, what are you doing, bud? Can't leave that tower right now. I don't know, Myth. I'd argue that that's about as bad as it functionally can be. Arguably, I mean, obviously 5 is better, right? But they killed all the important. They killed all the important people. That's a pretty successful fight from Freshly Forged in my book. I won't split any hairs on it.
I mean, you're right to do so. But if you take a look at the gold and XP charts, we're only looking at about 600 in favor of Freshly Forged, as well as 24 experience. This is a completely even game.
And it really has been, and I think these two teams are evenly matched, and I think maybe even a bit surprisingly so. When this was Flashpoint, FaraKrik, Fusify, Kespainify, Simi, and Johnny, they were largely thought of as the team that was trying to get Johnny to the late game, as Pyromancer is secured by Freshly Forged. And I was wondering, how is this team kind of going to work on its own? What was their identity going to be when they started playing by themselves? It looks like their identity is that they're not afraid of anything, man. These guys are constantly looking to take fights. They seem to have a ton of confidence in each other and their own individual play. And they're not going to let big names across from them intimidate them at all.
But it does seem like they still do have that jungle focus in Zek. Maybe not trying to get him to late game like they did Zani, but they're going to let him just control the early game and get us into the late game, putting Janus, in the match. Late game Janus is Winnie's best, but at the same time, you need those hyper carries coming forward, and I'm not sure if Skadi's just enough to do it. Yemoja's going to do a very good job of peeling them out, however, covering a little bit of Janus' weakness.
should be able to help them out in those team fights when he's around LeMoGoW and the rest of this team. Freshly Forged, on the other hand, are going to have plenty of potency when they start moving into this late game. I mean, Fafnir, even if he was the only Guardian, it does plenty for your team, but also you factor in that Deathwalker has been able to go a little bit more aggro with this, with that Spear of Desolation in third slot, followed up with that Hide of the Urchin. I think you can kind of forget that Fafnir's damage, even by himself, actually can be rather relevant in these fights. So Freshly Forged are certainly going to be getting even more potent as this game goes on too. And you know what? It's tough to call, man. I just think that we're in for a really good smite.
It looks like it, but I'm glad that you brought up Fafnir's build. He's got the secondary Gauntlet of Thieves.
He does.
So if these fights get split up, it's favored towards Freshly Forged.
Collis initiating in. That was Blink Cataclysm for him to try and find some beads, but he gets punished for it this time. This has happened a few too many times to Collis this game. I mean, we certainly know that Collis likes to play aggressive, but Optimus Gang have punished it for him this time. The rest of Freshly Forged, though, now on the full retreat path. Zek takes right to the sky to try and see if they can find a couple more kills. And it's PrettyPriMe that's become the appetizing target. Zek gets him easily. Looking to see if he can find a little bit more on this Pele. It fails. He does get Kespainify, but FaraKrik buries him for it. Right on the backside. Unstable Vortex is inconsistent. Damage says who as FaraKrik continues to pump out the damage. Deathwalker now and Joshy, the only two standing. Gotta start falling back. Joshy went for the ultimate. Couldn't find it. Instead has to use beads just to disengage. And this should be the tier 2.
Faeles may have fallen there, but I have to shout out the smart play. He held his ultimate autos to line up the cones to hit as many people as possible, finding the long-range kill onto the Skadi. That's not easy to do. That's a smart play.
These tier 2 towers should come down. They're going to a lot of respect to Joshy and Collis here, who are here by themselves, letting these minion waves get cleared a little bit too easily. Deathwalker should be here on his way shortly to try and help out with this as well. But Collis has Cataclysm back up again, finds a two-man stun, and Joshy shuts down Fusify. There's the River's Rebuke from LeMoGoW to try and buy them an escape path, and it works perfectly in that regard. But you really would have thought they'd have gotten that tier 2 tower there. That is a solid defense from Freshly Forged.
Freshly Forged coming out a little bit ahead as well. Now they have the gold lead themselves. They could look to move towards this gold fury. Should be spawning in just about 40 seconds. Or they could look to group up around the Fire Giant. I'll say it as many times as I have to. The defender's position is always easier to hold than the aggressors. If you can get the vision coverage on any objective and maintain that centralized position around it, it's so much easier to hold it than to spearhead your way into it. So whoever rotates to these objectives first are going to be heavily favored in these fights.
Defender's advantage certainly strong here at this point. We're about 21 minutes in, and this game still feels like virtually a deadlock, doesn't it, Myth? I mean, the numbers say exactly that much. About 1,000 gold difference spread across 5 members. That's almost nothing, really, at this point. The experience difference not that much further either. Just kind of eyeballing these levels really quick. Everyone relatively close. The only real gap is LeMoGoW and Deathwalker, about 2 levels there. And even still, probably not tremendously impactful, I'd say. So either one of these teams at this point still has rightful claim to this game.
It's really on who can find the first pick and then move it into something more important. Right now, LeMoGoW, as you said, does have the slight level deficit, but I'd argue that she brings more to the team fight than Deathwalker can, but
Sure.
Deathwalker is going to bring a lot more to any sort of objective burn. So if Freshly Forged pulls the lead, it's going to be very easy for them to blow up something with the Coerce.
Another Fury being started up by Optimus Gang. They've split these 1-to-1 so far. The Fury has now been leashed, though the health hasn't fully reset. Empty to Crypts has been dropped from PrettyPriMe here already, and Optimus Gang look a bit worse for wear. LeMoGoW has been caught by the ultimate from Joshy, comes right back into the waiting grasp of Freshly Forged, and there's just nowhere to go. Joshy on a killing spree, and now it's Freshly Forged starting up the Gold Fury. And by starting it, obviously I meant finishing it. Objective secured.
That fight went their way because Faeles found his way to FaraKrik easily on the Janus and forces him out before the fight could even start. Unfortunately, doesn't find the kill, but drops him to about maybe 50 HP as he has to return to base with his ultimate. That ult's been playing a huge part in these team fights. You don't normally think of Through Space and Time as like a Spear to the 9 wins, but that's how he's been using it.
He has been using it for damage a lot of the time. So normally, I think we see it used sort of creating these avenues of escape, and not always escape, but even chase sometimes too. Just giving your team options to weave in and out of the fight. But I think FaraKrik's played this Janus well, you know, despite some of our earlier skepticism about the god. And I don't think that when we're being skeptical about Janus, it's that the god is necessarily just bad. It's that you have to be so good on the pick to get what comes relatively easy to some other gods, right?
You have to play nearly perfect to match another god, but if you do play perfectly, you do have a high skill ceiling. The utility that Janus brings is very high.
Agreed.
But playing perfectly all the time, even these top-level players, it's not easy.
Wow, Staff of Mirrodin from Kha'Zix. That is such a curious pickup to me. I mean, I've got to think, especially with how much of a focus he's been, that he'd want more protections. FaraKrik has to use that through space and time. That's a ton of damage from Deathwalker. Nearly gets the kill onto him, but FaraKrik should be out of there for now and getting that back off successfully. Maybe not Kha'Zix on the hunt for him in the jungle, but not going to be able to catch up to him. FaraKrik certainly safe. But to talk about this Staff of Mirrodin a little bit, Myth, I mean, certainly this is your time to shine. Come on in here for me on this one. Is double Shockwave or double Geb Shield really that good that you'd want to pick this item up here?
Double Shockwave, knockup being one of the few forms of CC that isn't really mitigated or DR'd rather.
Right.
That's huge. It works so well. You see it a lot on Bacchus. Geb maybe a little bit less so. That Shockwave is a much smaller knockup than any other. However, double shield as well, that option of utility can be pretty decent. I'm not going to argue that it's the best pickup, but
well, we'll get our chance to see how he used it now. He just got through dropping down the Cataclysm, has used one Geb Shield, but I don't even know if he had time to use 2 rotations there. He was shredded instantaneously. I mean, Kha'Zix is certainly a guy I trust, but protections are pretty good too, and Staff of Mirrodin's got almost nothing in that department. Deathwalker now a good bit low as well, and he's got to start running for the hills. Shredded by Zek. FaraKrik gets in on the action as well, as PrettyPriMe ends up dropping to the floor. Just Faeles and Joshy left standing, but Optimus Gang are heading right to the FG, and I don't even think Freshly Forged can come look at it. Though it looks like Faeles is going to come be nearby to at least try and disrupt as the Fire Giant gets picked up.
Faeles does have Blink available right now. She could go for the very quick Blink in one, maybe steal it. We've seen her steal a couple objectives already.
And Faeles going in for it to try and get it. Faeles strips it away. That's a nightmare scenario if you're Optimus Gang. Yes, they get the kill, but that is huge from Faeles to be able to strip that one from him. I mean, obviously it is on Joshy. That's not the biggest deal in the world. What's so critical there is that Optimus Gang just straight up don't have it now, and Freshly Forged can stall this game out a bit longer. In fact, when they come back up, they're still ahead by over 5,000 gold, man. They're the ones in the driver's seat.
They're up. Fire Giant no longer available. 3 tier 2 towers available to be taken, or 2 rather. But that is one of the failings of Janus. No objective confirmed. That opens up Faeles to identify that, blink in and steal it. Kind of glad I said it, because that is a Hail Mary play.
Yeah, but that's like 4th on the list of things that went wrong there, right? Optimus Gang do almost nothing in terms of vision to make sure that they understand what's, or anyone who potentially is coming over. They clearly thought that objective is going to go uncontested, right? Instead, Faeles lurks around the corner. It's Freshly Forged that actually have the vision so that they can understand where the Fire Giant health is, and then just well-timed by Faeles to get in there and strip that one away.
It was a smart play, and the ROI is very high, but the risk was very low. If Faeles falls there, the rest of his team is spawning just as he falls, so they can't even move in towards objectives. It's just smart play.
Yeah. It's a good call there from Faeles. And I don't even know, I mean, how many other junglers even get there in time, right? I mean, obviously Pele, with all that extra movement speed, gets her there in time to be able to kind of set up in position and then pick her moment as well, too. A lot of stuff has to go almost exactly perfectly right for that play to happen, and Freshly Forged absolutely get it. So they're still right in this game right now. But if you're Optimus Gang, I don't think that that's any reason for there to be doom and gloom. Certainly that could have gone better, but they're still in this game very much so. Fusify grabs 2 and throws them back. The River's Rebuke is right there to follow up, but not really a ton of damage there. Deathwalker does look for a good deal of damage on the Kespainify, but Kespainify is still standing, manages to not only get the kill on the Deathwalker, but Kespainify has made it out as well. What a huge answer back from Optimus Gang. Zek now has to come rejoin with the group. There are a couple low HP bars on Optimus Gang, but that's huge. They kept Kespainify alive.
Deathwalker kind of missed the memo there that Jing Shen was in their backline, really disrupting him. They couldn't follow up on the dash in from the Dragon. Unfortunately, it results in his death, but the damage was so close. Yemoja heal is what kept her alive there, is on top of the shield. So lucky.
Spear of Deso, Divine Ruin, and Soul Reaver. I mean, this is a potent damage build from Deathwalker, and still relatively bruisery too, so you can definitely tell the idea that he's looking for here, but it just gets a bit punished that time because the team was fractured thanks to good play by Fusify on that back line. Fury does end up going in favor of Optimus Gang, so they're trying to fight their way back into this, now only down about 3,000 gold as opposed to the 5,500 or so they were down when they were about to go start that Fire Giant play, so they're very much still right in it.
Deathwalker just now finished Divine Ruin. That's the first anti-heal item picked up by the side of Freshly Forged. You can't be doing that besides Brawler's Beatstick, of course. You can't be doing that so late in the game against Yemoja. Her healing is so potent. You have to slow her down a little bit more. Anti-heal on Opwash as well would have been a lot easier to land. The Empty the Crypts is going to hit so many more people. It's going to keep it online a lot longer as a persistent damage source. Instead, we're electing to put it on these single target gods.
Freshly Forged does get the Pyromancer, and they have positioning, but the Fire Giant not going to be up for another minute and a half. Another River's Rebuke to separate the fight through space and time. Cripples Faeles early on in this fight, but he's already low HP-wise and probably can't afford to stick around in this fight. Deathwalker goes in and right, but takes a ton of damage for the trouble, losing the battle up against Kespainify. Zek gets to Prime way in the back line. He's got another target. It's that low HP Faeles, but Faeles still had Volcanic Lightning, a huge answer back to make it 1-for-1. Deathwalker with the stun and the leap. Kespainify, though, is able to answer back quite nicely. Joshy gets 1-2 to make it 2-for-2. Another very even battle.
It looked to be like Faeles was trying to communicate to his team. He was playing very hesitant in that fight after Janus ult ripped through him for over half his health. He sat behind the Fire Giant. It looked like he didn't want to engage at all. But Deathwalker, like he always does, doesn't let go of that W key and keeps going forward. Fortunately, Camazotz dove a little bit too far, so Faeles is able to get involved.
Man, Optimus Gang are giving him an absolute run for it, though, aren't they? Freshly Forged looked earlier on like they were Goku took the weights off against Tian, right? Like it was easy for them earlier on this week. But now, up against this Optimus Gang roster, we're starting to see some of these struggles. I mean, what they're doing all makes sense. I don't think Freshly Forged has gone too far left of field or out of pocket or anything like that. But it's just not going to be easy, I don't think, against some of these other teams that are going to be playing at the group stages. Because, I mean, Optimus Gang, as good as they are, there's better teams waiting in group stages,
Some
right?
super scary teams out there.
It's not going to get any easier for them. So I think Freshly Forged kind of got to show us here they can buckle down and grab these games when they need to.
I mean, we've been shown that Freshly Forged has been growing as a team. This is not the same Freshly Forged we saw in week 1 and 2, getting eliminated in quarters every step of the way. Instead, now they're coming into this set, dominating the entirety of the day, and just now for the first time getting challenged by Optimus Gang, which is by no means a slacker team.
Not at all.
Perhaps if they're going to make it to group stages, they're already qualified. They're likely the 4th or 3rd best team in the group. So Freshly Forged making a very good show, and they're only improving.
Hollis. Cataclysm with the double shockwave to try and lock down LeMoGoW, so that's at least one instance of how he'd like to use it. Just as a longer sort of CC chain, I think, is the sort of idea there from Collis. And now that he's sort of put some extra defensive tools in the back of it, the Sovereignty, the Bulwark of Hope, there's certainly plenty of tankiness from him. I wonder if the order could have been different. Staffmir could have maybe come later, but Fire Giant has been started
risky pull.
at half HP. It's certainly not whether they're going to get away with sneaking this time. River's Rebuke to cut it off, to at least try and slow down the DPS and disrupt the rest of the fight. Deathwalker gets Kespainify early on. Fire Giant still has not been leashed. It's still very low and still putting out damage, but FaraKrik gets another kill here too. So does Zek to make it 2-for-1 in favor of Optimus Gang, and Deathwalker is starting to get low as well. Fusify cleans him up. PrettyPriMe is low in the back and needs some help, but no help's coming. Zek buries Prime and Faeles can't do enough by himself. A 4-for-1 in favor of Optimus Gang.
Shouts to Fire Giant that fight, doing the majority of the damage, and Faeles still not out yet, not safe. Should be getting out here unless he decides to turn around, which it looks like he is.
Was looking for the turnaround play, but couldn't quite find
Nice.
the knockup he was looking for. Great use there to pull him back in. Faeles ends up falling for the deicide, and Optimus Gang. They don't have Kespainify. That's their best sustained DPS on this Fire Giant. But as long as Zek is there, they certainly should still be able to chew through this one and get the actual objective. Joshy is 15 seconds away from even being up on the map and certainly from being relative in this fight. So that's huge. But what happened in that team fight that you saw that had this one go so heavily in favor of Optimus Gang?
Well, Fire Giant never getting dropped, actually found a knock-up on 2 targets during that team fight. However, it's FaraKrik being left unchecked throughout the duration of that fight. No one even looked at him on the side of Freshly Forged. He shot through space and time through the entirety of the team fight, didn't find anyone, but used it to position behind them, and just got 3 rotations of an unstable vortex just going off the chain, truly. No one looking at him at all. Just now burning his beads. At no point should Janus still have his actives after a team fight like that.
Someone has to get back there and put some pressure on this guy. Joshy has now found
Rest in
one
peace.
target here in the jungle. He'll be coming right back to a very swift death. That was FaraKrik that they had ensnared in their trap. So there you go.
Yeah, someone got on him, he falls. I bet this team fight goes a little bit worse for Optimus Gang.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to wish they had FaraKrik there for it. But they can kind of have this fight happen on their own terms, right? They don't have to go starter right away without him since they're the ones with FG around their waist. We're past the 30-minute threshold as well, so Enhanced Fire Giant is here for them too. And they've still got plenty of time, 3 more minutes to go get to work. Look at all these tier 2 towers that are still up. There's 3 tier 2 towers to go get, and the Phoenix is behind it as well. So Optimus Gang still have their work cut out.
Pressuring down the left side of the map and creating space for Faeles to go in towards that tier 1 tower is very smart. Splitting the push right now is almost the best thing they can do, especially with that 1-player deficit on the side of Optimus Gang. They're going to have to commit a lot of resources to slowing down Freshly Forged here.
But only for like 10 more seconds. I don't know how much push time that this
should be enough for
really
this tier 2.
They'll get this tier 2, but I mean, it should not
maybe
go
not.
uncontested. This is a Fire Giant squad. They're fighting into the late game as well. I don't know, man. This is a risky call. Rivers Rebuke has 2 members locked in and stuck in the whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Fusify punishes them summarily, and PrettyPrime's already been taken out through space and time. Has set up a perfect path for them to keep up the chase as well. Collis manages to roll back out. Zek does get knocked up by the shockwave, but they're going to keep up the chase. Zek won't miss, and Collis falls as well. Now they got a chance to lock down Fusify. He does land the ultimate, fails.
Nice.
Shreds Kespainify. Joshy gets Fusify, and LeMoGoW comes back in from the ult too. Zek gets one, but Joshy finds a double. It's 3 for 3.
Deathwalker playing almost a secondary support role right now, just keeping Joshy involved. And he's doing it. Joshy's killing just about anyone that shows up near him. The Dragon transformation coming out, that's huge chase potential on a Zek, but it looks like they're going to elect to go for the Phoenix. It's a 2 for 2, and I have to favor Joshy's squad here going on to this Phoenix.
Joshy chunking the Phoenix at this point. FaraKrik trying to come in to contest, but the second that he considers coming through the portal, Joshy makes him pay for it. But now Zek just going to sit on top of him. That was stubbornness, wasn't it, from them to try and force down that Phoenix on the left-hand side, and Zek won't let him. They should be able to keep the Phoenix standing for now, but remember, it was Optimus Gang that got the Fire Giant of 4 members. I know they didn't have FaraKrik there, but Freshly Forged got aggressive into it.
My jaw is dropped that Deathwalker elected to jump onto the Janus there. His 1 wasn't available. He can't have imagined that 1 ability was going to be enough. It was close, but he could have used that to go over the wall and escape very easily now that Camazotz ult was down. But it seems like Freshly Forged just doesn't respect Optimus Gang, does it? There's almost no respect coming out from this team. They're just pushing and holding W at every step of the way. Joshy playing back. Deathwalker finally grouping up around him. That's the best they've looked in a team fight as of yet.
It's certainly a looser play than what we saw from them earlier, I think, right? And that might just be an instance of this is the finals, but it's not going to change a whole lot for these teams. Not a ton is at stake. So maybe you give it a chance to see how it feels with the staff of Mirrored and Geb, right? Or the double Guardian comp with Deathwalker on the Fafnir solo and those kinds of things. So maybe they're trying some stuff out. Is Puch a decent answer to the Yemoja, to the Camazotz and that sort of thing? So far in this game, I don't know the answer is yes. I mean, he has struggled, right? 1-7 and 3. PrettyPriMe has really not been all that comfortable this game, but I think if there's times to experiment, this certainly could be one of them.
I might save my experimentation for scrims, but you know, you got the stage, everyone watching you, about 4,000 people watching right now. Might as well do it with an audience, right? Perform best. Athletes always do better in front of an audience. It's an interesting portal coming out from Krik there. I wonder if Freshly Forged could be able to spot that out. This next Fire Giant is going to be very indicative of this game. I think it's going to be truly whoever pulls it has my vote for the win.
Whoever ends up getting the actual objective itself or starts the fight.
Whoever gets the objective, you're right.
I don't know. I couldn't tell because I mean it was Optimus Gang with it last time, and Freshly Forged didn't seem to care much at all about that part of the disparity, and they made it at least a 3 for 3 on the back of that fight. So I don't know, man. Until I see someone take the Titan, I don't know if I'm really ready to call it. It's been such an even matchup between these two so far that, like I said, I'm just kind of enjoying some good smite.
The Dance of the Fire Giant starting now. The vision hasn't really been pushed forward from either team. They need to get some vision forward if they want to look to pull it. Freshly Forged did pull last time incredibly unsafely, partially off the back of the fact that they aren't dropping very many wards deep in the enemy jungle.
LeMoGoW trying to get back to some safe positioning for now as Freshly Forged starting to step a bit forward into the jungle, but he should be A-okay. I know you've been kind of making a point of catching FaraKrik as Kespainify's beads get forced out. That's actually a pretty big get for Freshly Forged. Kespainify now basically a sitting duck there in the backline if they can catch to him. That's the ultimate from Puch from Prime. Don't quite know what he saw there, but it didn't look ideal. FaraKrik doesn't find much with his ultimate either, so this might be the full retreat time from Optimus Gang as Deathwalker just used the underhand tactics to go in.
Found a lot of damage on Janus, but he needs some peel from his team. Geb shield might not be enough.
Still just barely alive though as Deathwalker to avoid these last few bubbles, and he does indeed survive that little bit of extra damage and make his way back out of there. But Freshly Forged have a ton of pressure at this point in the match right now, with Optimus Gang kind of forced back underneath their tier 2. Deathwalker does have teleport. He hasn't upgraded it yet, but I assume he could and come back out to this ward if he needs. Nope, my man's hoofing it, even with the upgraded teleport, though he did have enough money.
That's a smart play. They have vision around the Fire Giant, so if he does need to use it, he will. However, LeMoGoW keeping his entire team at full health post-fight,
nice.
And she's still at full Omi. That really shows why Yemoja has such a high ban rate. Yeah, looking over at that healing, 21,000, almost 22, 37 minutes in the game, and it's only going to go up from here.
It's true, man. She does so much for your team. The River's rebukes have been great as well in terms of just walling off parts of the team fight. Deathwalker making his way in right to the back line. They want Kespainify, who they know doesn't have purification beads, but Fusify does great heal with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel through space and time. Was there to follow up as well as Zek gets the first kill of this fight. Fusify wants to see if they can find a bit more on the back of this. They know Paulus is low as well, and Freshly Forged have got to start falling back.
Deathwalker's playing so overly confident right now. He's not as tanky as he seems to think he is. Thieves and Urchin are good bruiser items, but looking at the rest of your build, bud, that's all damage, and it's not quite enough to find the kills that you're landing your stuns on, but you're not tanky enough to just go in and do it for the damage either. Maybe play around your team a little bit more and let Freshly Forged really form a shell around him and play off the stuns with him. That's when it's going to get a lot better.
Look at Kespainify. He's got Breastplate of Valor, clearly worried about some of this extra damage he was taking, probably from Faeles, who's done a good job blowing him up in the back line, really all game long so far. So a lot of kind of different item selections than I feel like what we normally see, but I can follow the thread on all of them, so you love to see it. It's open here in Season 7 in terms of what you pick up.
Going into this next fight, Freshly Forged has all of their actives available. On the side of Optimus Gang, a lot are missing. If they realize that, they could look to force it. And Freshly Forged has been forcing a lot of fights, so yes. I imagine even if they don't know, it's just going to be a little bit of a happy coincidence.
No, I don't know that I've seen Freshly Forged retreat all game, man. Either I'm in the fountain or I'm fighting, it feels like, from these guys, so they're looking to take every battle they can get right now. They've got the vision control around this Fire Giant with plenty of sentries down. And as you said, when you have the entrenched position, it's so much easier to defend, even if you do have to give up a little bit of that space since you've got all the vision set up around it. Fire Giant's up and ready, and Optimus Gang certainly have to come out to try and contest this one. But you were talking about earlier on how well that they can pressure out FaraKrik and not just let him free cast in the back. I imagine that's still going to be critical here.
If Faeles can find a blink onto FaraKrik and even land just a 2-1, not even having to kill him, just push him out just a little bit to half health and not have him rotating around your backline safely, that's when the fight will turn. Calus finds the ult.
Drops the Cataclysm, has the Shockwave to follow up, but LeMoGoW still somehow makes it back out through space and time, goes for the fight and does find some decent damage, but Deathwalker is able to find the cleanup kill on Fusify. Doesn't have the underhand tactics available just yet, and so FaraKrik claims his life as well. It's 1-for-1 support for solo. Zek, though, wants to keep this fight happening a little bit longer. Prime in some trouble now, but it's a target swap over towards Paulus, and that's left Kespainify on an island. Faeles, gobbles him up with the volcanic lightning, makes it look easy, but FaraKrik hungry, beads to avoid the knock-up, and gets to Prime way in the back.
Not only that, but now Calus in a little bit of trouble, has to cancel his one early so he doesn't bleed out, uses the shield, but that's going to be not enough. Buys just a little bit of time, though. Joshy finding his targets.
Coming in to try and back his boy up, does make it back out with that Bifrost just barely in time. So Joshy's out of there, but I don't think he knew FaraKrik was this close. FaraKrik should be able to chase him down in this Janus. The Aegis is good, but I feel like it's a bit of just delaying the inevitable at this point, right? Because they know where Joshy is. They should be able to come lock him down relatively easily. There's the unstable vortex, and Joshy does end up dying.
Joshy was smart there. He Aegis the unstable vortex, and then he looks to find the fight afterward because he knows he's not going to outrun a Janus. Just about nobody can.
No.
He finds the knock-up, just wasn't enough around that corner, only landed one auto off of it, and then Yemoja around the corner lands the stun, no more beads available, falls instantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right in terms of he's giving himself a chance to try and find some kind of trade in that fight, but I don't know, man. I think once he ends up getting forced into that fight, because initially he gets pulled back in trying to keep Calus alive, I think is who it was. He came over to try and help out, and then he has to take the Bifrost suboptimally and realizes he's in enemy territory. I almost wonder if maybe it's better to hold on to the Aegis there, but he can't find the trade and ends up falling either way.
If he does find that kill, LeMoGoW wouldn't have been able to solo him, so I imagine that's what he was going for. You got to make these huge swinging plays, especially when the game is so seesaw-like, just back and forth. You know, everyone's not a hero, but if Freshly Forged needs a hero, Joshy could be it.
Joshy certainly could, man. He's played well all game. Everyone has. It's been an excellent game here so far, but an aggressive one. Certainly, as we've got plenty of kills on the board up through this point. Fire Giant started by Optimus Gang, but this feels like a soft commit. Kalis with another Blink Cataclysm onto 3 members forces LeMoGoW to respond with the River's Rebuke, but Fusify has already picked up the rock and brought him right back towards the rest of the squad, knocked up as well. But Kalis still alive even now through space and time commit. They finally get the kill, but Faeles comes in and finds big damage in his own right. Not enough to get any kills of his own though. It's 1 for 0. Kespainify needs some help in the backline. Joshy can't quite lock him down, but FaraKrik starting to melt, the breath too hot, but Zek gets a kill in the Faeles.
They used 4 ultimates on the Geb, and it's happened every time Kalis engages. They just immediately drop everything on him. They need to identify that Freshly Forged, have Kalis engage, and then just back out instantly. But instead, the Freshly Forged boys love that W key.
They do. They want to fight, man. That's why they're here. Zek gets 1 more kill on the Deathwalker here this time, but Joshy and PrettyPriMe do enough damage that I don't think Optimus Gang can feel comfortable starting up this Fire Giant just yet with them here. They need to wait for everyone to get there and then consider, I mean, maybe even just going to look for some towers until they've got the full squad back. These Fire Giant fights have been so difficult for them. You don't want to give Freshly Forged a way back in as FaraKrik gets caught out and left. If they know he's got 2 members with him and left, yeah, then they can start to try and head over towards Fire, and that looks to be the call as FaraKrik takes a ton of damage from Prime, but this is still favorable for Optimus Gang.
He created so much space, dragging him away. I'm interested to think about what Freshly Forged was really wanting to do. It looks like they're going to group up around the Gold Fury and just trade that out for the Fire Giant either way, knowing that it would be a very hard contestation, 2 versus 4 on it. Instead, they almost find Janus, but Fire Giant, largely, it's an unchanged game. Now, 4 with Fire Giant on the side of Optimus Gaming, Gold Fury pulled now by Freshly Forged. It's completely even in terms of XP and gold effectively at this point in the game.
Indeed.
It's still anyone's match. Freshly Forged's defense is a little bit weaker than I'd like to see. They have a really spearhead level comp. It's like they were planning on playing aggressively. Once they get to the enemy Phoenix, that's when they're favored, but they don't have any real great way to keep them out of their own Phoenix outside of Opwash's ultimate.
Empty the Crypts is a pretty powerful defensive tool, but
Only 1 per team fight.
it might be kind of the only one that they have really at this point to try and keep them alive. Doug highlighting the anti-heal showing up there in the form of the Divine Ruin for the Opwash. Certainly
That's a smart pickup.
something that they're going to need to help out here for them, but Optimus Gang now going to clean up these tier 2 towers. I don't imagine Freshly Forged are going to put up huge fights around these tier 2s. I mean, 45 minutes in, they're not critically important. So Optimus Gang should be able to get those and then start looking for these Phoenix defenses. I know you don't love Freshly Forged defenses, but what about the offense from Optimus Gang, their siege comp?
The siege on the side of Optimus Gang,
They are
ironically, not super great. The best they can do is have people poking out and just sustaining damage. They're looking to trade damage as long as they can. Use that Fire Giant to heal it up, use the Yemoja to heal it up, but Freshly Forged looks like they're willing to defend just about anything.
It sure looks that way. LeMoGoW, I like the idea, bud, but really not able to catch anyone out with that River's Rebuke. And that means everyone's able to make it back out. So we are going to see the straight-up Phoenix sieges now, and all the tier 2 towers do end up coming down. Freshly Forged gives sort of a soft defense on the tier 2s to not give them up for free. And Optimus Gang can now start to see how this path towards breaking open the actual base can function. It looks like they're going to keep everything focused here on the middle lane, at least for now.
The 5 group on mid is interesting in that normally you would go for the side lanes. Long lane, traditionally, where you go first to go for the Phoenix because it's furthest from the Fire Giant, makes it harder to get yourself over there if they lose their Phoenix. However, side lanes are inherently better to attack because they can only come from the sides.
Kalis uses the Cataclysm outside of the Phoenix. Does get some relics for it. That's nice for Freshly Forged, but they want to come take this fight. Typically, the fights on the Phoenix you are favored on, but they want to come fight out here in the lane. Fusify brings Kalis back towards everybody else, but they go right for Kespainify in the back line, and I don't think Optimus Gang are ready for that one. They've lost their Skadi early on in this fight. Faeles gets a double kill by taking care of Fusify as well. LeMoGoW in some trouble. LeMoGoW done. He got cooked by Deathwalker and all that Fafnir damage. Who needs to wait on Phoenixes and you got fights like that?
I've read the Book of Smite, right? They told me to sit on my own Phoenix when I'm defending, but Freshly Forged tosses it out the window, finds a sick engage in Kalis. That's the first time that he went in with a blink engage, and they weren't immediately there with him, taking the ultimates as well. You know, Optimus Gang drops as much damage as they could onto Kalis. It's not enough at this point in the game. He lives just long enough, and Freshly Forged chases them out without their abilities available to them. Now they can barrel down the lane and potentially take a Phoenix themselves. 30 seconds left on the earliest respawn on the side of Optimus Gang.
Yeah, they're definitely favored to at least get one Phoenix here. It's a question of how much more than that can Freshly Forged get. A lot's on the menu here for them. Optimus Gang gonna have to dig deep with FaraKrik and Zek to try and hold on to what's been an impressive performance so far. Deathwalker goes in right away to force the defensive positioning out from Zek. Now in comes the actual Phoenix damage. The minions healthy by removing the backdoor protections, and the mid Phoenix has been shredded. Freshly Forged
Are they moving in for the ends?
as if they want to head right on this Titan. I think that that's what they
2
want.
seconds.
Deathwalker and the rest of the squad moving right into the Titan room. They're going to empty the crypts here as well.
Space
and
of
there's
time
not
finds
enough
3.
in the gas canister for Optimus Gang to try and keep this game standing. But maybe they can hold on to it after all. They're starting to push them back out. And there's enough members of Optimus Gang here. A double quill now for Zek, and they hold on. A full deicide to slow down Freshly Forged.
Janus OP. He found 3 with his ultimate. That's essentially a through Spirit of the Nine Winds rally.
Sure.
I was going to say through Space of Times, which is the right one, but that's not how you normally see it used. And now they're going to go ahead and end the game. There's nothing that can really stop them. 50 seconds on the nearest respawn. And an honorable try from the side of Freshly Forged, but maybe just a little bit too arrogant, if you would. 2 seconds left on the spawn from Skadi. I wouldn't have made that call personally, but 48 minutes in the game. Maybe they're just looking for an end either way.
Maybe, man. I mean, they stepped in to try and grab that in, but just did not work for them. That's a stellar base defense from Optimus Gang, and really a stellar game 1 from Optimus Gang. I mean, this Freshly Forged team, we talk about it all the time. On paper, this is one of the scariest team in group stages in either region, right? But Optimus Gang, they've always been a team that was capable of punching above their weight, not caring about who was on the opposite side from them and letting that intimidate them as Flashpoint or wherever they were in the back. And that's exactly how they're going to play it here in this game, too. Game number 1 of the set going their way. And I'm just excited now for game number 2. I got to see how that's going to go.
I mean, it could go either way. We saw it there. That was such a back and forth game. You said it plenty of times during that game. This is just good Smite.
Yeah.
This is what all the fans at home have been wanting to watch this entire week. And it's the first time we're really seeing it in full swing. This is high-tier Smite, SPL caliber, and I'm confident in saying that.
Yeah, and there were certainly some different choices being made, I would say, in terms of some of the build paths that we saw from some of these gods, in terms of where they picked up some of their items. The very early Staff Mirrodin pickup we saw for the Geb from Kalis. We did see it picked up for the Xing Chen as well on the opposite side, but a little bit later, like you more traditionally would expect from that item. But I don't think it really hurt them by any means. I mean, there was a certain point where Kalis, even they were willingly dumping everything on him, they weren't going to get that kill.
They weren't. I imagine we see Kalis pick a more aggressive god like we have earlier in the sets today. Kalis has been playing, he's like an Aurora. He's like a Roar Light. He's not playing the Hercules, but he will play Fafnirs. He'll play Ymir or Ares, as you said earlier. He wants to play those aggressive gods that can find the damage on his own, and Geb certainly just is not that.
Yeah, we saw the double Guardian composition from him. It didn't quite work here, but maybe they can make it work for him in game number 2. That'll be coming up on the other side of the break.
Welcome back after a nearly 50-minute game, and that was a fun one to watch. And if you watched all of those 50 minutes, it was a great chance for you to get yourself some of those viewer points. And if you jump into game right now and your accounts are all linked, you can grab the Viewer Pass bundle. You get an Agni skin and 2 times viewer points, as well as much, much more moving forward throughout the season. So make sure to not miss out on all those great bonuses. Gormizer still with me to break down game number 1 in our finals here. And what a game there from Optimus Gaming. We expected Freshly Forged to have a good performance, but Optimus Gaming, they took it to them there at the end.
The fact that they held up as much as they did was huge. Winning the game is even bigger.
Yeah.
And the first blood in that game, you might remember it was ages ago, was a
right,
duo
I was a young
lane
man.
wipe. Like, I mean, it was like so much in favor of Freshly Forged, and there was just so many moments where it was this team came out on top, but then a good trade right after ends up making it kind of nullified, and things like that prolong it. And like they said, it was just good Smite.
Right, I really like that point, because even more so that they won, it's kind of the fashion in which they won. It was long, it was grindy, they stuck in there with some guys who have done it at the highest level, and they fought back from an early game deficit. As disastrous as that start was for Optimus Gang, they're able to fight their way back in. Also helps score when you have a 21-kill Camazotz on your team.
Yeah, so 21, 2, and 19. Gives up 2 kills. Was a part of 40 of 44. Was only missed out on 4 kills that
That's
the
nuts.
team was able to come through. And you know what? I don't care that you had less than 10 wards placed. When you are literally carrying the team on your back, that did so much for that Camazotz to be able to provide that everything. The ganks, every amount of sustain, the control that was able to come through. That being said, I will put a pause on this jungler, and I will look over at Faeles, because Faeles came through in a lot of big objective steals that admittedly didn't amount to as much for Freshly Forged, but Faeles was doing a ton in order to keep up with this. I just think Camazotz is top ban for a reason. That was the reason. We just saw a very good showcase of why you typically see this banned out, why it gets taken away, and that was from the jungle. We've seen it do this similar performance in the solo lane. You got to deal with it. And the best way to deal with it is in the pick and ban screen, take it out of the game.
Yeah, that is a completely dominant performance, and I like the point you bring up, that we've kind of seen it happen in solo and in jungle as well. Some interesting builds nonetheless. I mean, a top-to-bottom interesting game is maybe the way to look at it for Freshly Forged. They pick that dual Guardian composition. That Fafnir kind of builds a hybrid of damage and defense, some Staff of Myrddins for the Guardians. It was curious, maybe, from Freshly Forged in that game.
And this was huge. I mean, FaraKrik had a lot of huge moments, but smacking 2 people with your ult and the fact that he got off so many unstable vortexes. There were so many moments where I think in one Fire Giant fight, he gets like 2 or 3 off for free, and it's a ton of damage for him. And it's moments like that where it's just like, man, this Janus pick doesn't normally pay off. A lot of teams will pick it up and then suffer for it more than anything. And FaraKrik made it work to the point where I wouldn't mind if he goes back to it. I don't think it's like your #1 pick. But if he happens to lock it in again, I don't have anything bad to say about it.
Right, I guess that was the follow-up question that you already answered. Is that maybe an outlier game for the Janus? Is that something you come to expect? Maybe comfort for FaraKrik, and definitely a game that he benefited from some serious jungle presence from Zek there in that game. Honestly, the solo lane matchup, I was surprised after Deathwalker kind of rolled through the last 2 games. I think LeMoGoW had a great game there, not only to stay even, but push his team kind of forward over the finish line as well.
That was actually really fun to see, and that's the thing that I think is going to be interesting. So LeMoGoW had Yemoja. They had Xing on their team. They had Camazotz on their team. And I had said going into that is enough to make you overlook anything else that's there. Janus ends up helping them as a net bonus for them, but you don't get those 3 in a game together across 10 picks, let alone on the same side. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a little bit more showing of what we saw at Optimus Gang, because there was a lot of good. There was also a lot of returns from Freshly Forged. Freshly Forged have maybe less of a lopsided matchup in the jungle if Camazotz isn't there to help clean things up afterward. Do they just take control of it? I mean, they had a 3K lead that they built even more on. Do they continue on that rate, or was it really just the Camazotz keeping them afloat?
Yeah, some gods you don't normally see make it through picks and bans made it through in game #1. We'll see if you can say the same here for game #2. That was nearly Freshly Forged game. I mean, it was even from start to finish. 5 men strong, rolling down the mid lane, nearly ending that game. It's a big turnaround, though, from Optimus Gang. Take that one away from them. So Freshly Forged, can't believe I'm saying it, still in the set very much so. They almost took game #1. Funnily enough, though, Geb and Fafnir panned out first off.
It's so weird to think that 30 seconds before winning the game for Optimus Gang, Optimus Gang almost lost the game at the Titan. Yeah, it's just so much control. And what I love is their adaptation to this. Geb did really well, considering, like, all things considered, him as well as the Fafnir were very controlling, did a ton. Deathwalker pulling out something like a Fafnir in the solo lane is not really the first thing your mind goes to in this current meta. So being able to get rid of that and leave so many picks open for yourself
that
again,
opens up,
it's just so good.
And that's always the kind of first pick question is, you can ban out, sort of whatever you want. You can leave something open for yourself because you'll be able to take it away. What are you giving up, though, is the question. Thor comes to mind. Odin comes to mind. 2 gods that have been banned out so heavily throughout these last few weeks. Camazotz locked in first off for them. I don't disagree with that at all. But I raised my eyebrows a little bit at Freshly Forged going for the Athena.
I'm hoping to see a Kukulkan, although they're going to go for the Merlin. I mean, he's been top ban in a lot of these games. We've seen him decide games in the last couple of weeks. And he is completely missing from the screen right now. But I like Merlin. I love Athena. She is one of my favorite Guardians to play, and she is incredibly flexible in the high tier play when you can come through and say, hey, I'm solo lane. Oh, actually, I'm jungle. Oh, actually, I'm support. Like, you have 3 places you can see her. Some people have played her mid. I don't expect to see her there, but the fact that she could even flex over there if you want her to just makes her such a good pick.
Well, with Kukulkan locked in, I imagine that is not a mid lane Freya.
No.
Thor picked up 6th overall here, so I think most notably you have to look at Odin still completely on the table.
Yeah, and I don't know where he'll fit in. Actually, for Optimus Gang, it wouldn't be bad to maybe pair with the Freya to have like a little bit of physical magical duality in the duo lane, plus good stun to help set her up to set up even more damage. I mean, Freya's going to kill you if you're CC'd anyway. Why not just get a good, nice range stun on top of that? Could set you up. He also works really well in the solo, and right now that's where both teams, I think, in my mind are going. Athena could potentially be over there, so Deathwalker may already have a god locked in.
Yep.
But if I'm Optimus Gang, you're figuring out, do we want to throw this Camazotz over there, or do we want him back in the jungle? And after last performance, I want him back in the jungle.
Yeah, it's been... It started off with Camazotz solo being, all the rage, and the last few games we've seen really what he can bring in the jungle as well. Still unpicked, unbanned is that Odin. Kukulkan likely for that solo lane picked for Optimus Gang, and that likely then puts Camazotz in the jungle role. Khepri rounding out their draft. I keep saying Odin. Is there still room for an Odin in this freshly forged lineup, or maybe not?
Honestly, I think it just comes down to the fact that Odin, especially when you get to a higher tier of play, is a little more predictable, and that might change the pace of it when it's coming down to it. The first couple of weeks, we did have some, well, not even mismatched ones, but a team that would take a lead very early on. But once you see what Odin can do once or twice, you kind of know what's coming out of him. That being said, Ymir has been in the game for years, so he has kind of the same thing going. You know what to expect out of him. I'm interested to see how he's going to pay off and where he's going to go with the Athena there. I assume it's solo, but both of them can do either side of the map.
Yeah, you kind of flip-flop one of those two depending on who you want to pair with that Hachiman. Khepri, Ymir, maybe the Guardian picks this time around. Optimus Gang, they take game 1. Game 2, Finch, take us in.
Into game number 2 we go indeed. Appreciate you, Dawson and Gore on the desk. It's Finch and Mifflin on the call one more time. As Freshly Forged, perhaps a bit shockingly, get upset in that game number 1. It's 50 minutes, though. Hard to call anything that happens in 50 minutes an upset. But Optimus Gang, the ones that managed to clutch that win out and are now here the victors. Now, this is one more thing I do want to quickly touch on. We saw the Hand of the Gods from them last time, and they do have it in inventory here again. So we're going to keep our eye on where it is they're choosing to use it. One for Zek, as well as one for Fusify on this Khepri tip.
They set it on the desk, and I want to point it out again because it is so insane to me. Freshly Forged isn't respecting the meta. This is 3 highly contested picks for Optimus Gang in the Kukulkan, in the Kukulkan, and inside the Camazotz, just freely taken. They could have taken Kukulkan at any point. They had second pick. They could have taken 2, actually. Instead, they'd like to go with that comp on the other side. A little bit less orthodox, and we'll see if that their own meta is better than what has been established by the general public.
There's certainly something to be said, right, for trusting your own picks and your own drafts and your own independent evaluations, but there's also plenty to be said for some stuff just being flat out good nowadays. So you're making life, I think, much harder than it has to be on yourself. Another thing to note is that they did ban this away from Kespainify, this Freya, back in game number 1. I know Freya's not hugely popular right now, but this is something that Kespainify loves to play, is some Freya. So if you leave it open for him, he'll take it, and then he'll see if he can try and find a way to punish you for it. So you got to keep an eye on how Kespainify chooses to play this matchup, especially when we'll have a Khepri to kind of bail him out of trouble when needed.
I imagine Khepri's going to focus a lot of his attention on this side of the map, opening with a middle for an avenue of success for Freshly Forged, as Khepri's going to want to keep this Freya alive as much as she possibly can, but you don't expect to see this level of aggression coming out of Freya early.
Man, Banish is such a good ability. I'll continue to say that I think that's Freya's best ability, and it sets up for first blood for Optimus Gang over on the left-hand side. Those stacking slows are pretty hard to get away from, too, and Optimus Gang certainly punish him with that.
Faeles looking for that early rotation again like he did last game. Last game he found 2. This game, Freya killed your team a little bit too early, bud. You have to walk back to your speed buff without those boosts too.
Gentlemanly guy to kill too, right? That's Baron Ymir or whatever. I don't remember exactly the name for that skin, but that's Gentleman Ymir, man. You
can't do that to him. He's just looking to farm,
He really is, just kind of hanging out, talking about stock markets or something. wouldn't want to kill him, right? But apparently Kespainify knows no honor, happily takes him down early on in the game, and that is huge for them to kick this game off on that kind of footing, right? Because Kespainify is clearly very comfortable in Freya already, and now they're accelerating that farm for him. It's scary.
And Freya, not an early game god, by the way. I don't think anyone thinks that in the chat, but I'll go ahead and say it right now. Freya is good in the late.
Yeah, her lane pressure is pretty good early.
Her lane pressure, she can push a wave early like Izanami, but her fight potential like that, you don't expect to see first blood come
Not
out
often.
inside of Freya. But around level 6 is when she's going to be able to hold her own with that ultimate as well, just going to put out all the damage that she needs. Maybe around that time, Khepri will rotate out, but even then, I imagine he'll stay a little bit longer.
Faeles is going to be really critical for them this time, though, man. I mean, how well he's able to use the store, especially if there's going to be a lot of pressure in the duo lane like there was just now from Optimus Gang, then they're really going to need someone to alleviate that. And you can kind of talk about that decision-making, you know, from your own personal experience. Sometimes I think if a lane gets out of control, you kind of want to stay away from it, right? You don't want to go over there and feed more kills to the wood chipper.
So, we'll talk about that in a second as a little bit of an engagement coming down. Finds
Fusify, is very dead.
Defender of Olympus, by the way. Very early. Deathwalker is going to TP back into his lane, not even to miss any farm.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, when a lane is so out of control and you think you can't impact it, yeah, you don't want to go over there. However, you kind of need to get there to shut down a Freya early. So as long as they don't drop any more kills to that Freya and they can turn it around with a Anvil of Dawn, that's when you can start getting involved. But they need the Freya ultimate, Valkyrie's Discretion, that has to go down before Thor rotates over. You don't want to be dunking Anvil of Dawn on someone who could just remove themselves from the playfield.
And return way more damage than you could ever hope to take, right, in that same window. What a powerful tool Valkyrie's Discretion is for Freya. Give her some options when she's under these ganks. Level 5 now for Faeles. So you might be seeing what he's thinking for that first gank relatively soon. He's backed by speed now, though. We'll give him a bit more time before we'll actually see where it is. He's looking to try and take some impactful points. But do you think he does need to come over to Kespainify and dunk there?
He needs to, insofar as long as Freshly Forged duo lane can force at least the beads, preferably the ultimate, out of this Freya, then that opens up Faeles to really rotate over. But until then, that's a very low potential gank.
Not going to be a whole lot Faeles can do there. He'll take another back to finish off the boots, the Warrior Tabi, and then come back out into the actual battleground. The mid laners this time, that's Merlin up against the Kukulkan. Nothing particularly surprising going on with these build paths so far. The Book of Thoth start for Kukulkan is fairly standard, as is this restored artifact start for PrettyPriMe. This maybe not so much standard. A little bit of action happening here on the right-hand side, but not going to find much more there. That double physical gank should mean that Deathwalker can itemize into that and maybe not be so vulnerable to it in a little bit.
Could easily look towards the Jade Emperor's helm or something along those lines,
Yep.
remove the power from the enemy team. And that's exactly what you want, but Faeles going to go up in the air here. Let's see how Deathwalker can follow up on this dunk.
This is going to be a bit tricky. LeMoGoW looked pretty close to this Rage transformation, and he absolutely was. That is not the timing when you want to show up in the lane, and instead it ends up being a fairly wasted ultimate from Faeles. In fact, it might be good he came over there. Deathwalker might have got handled, and LeMoGoW kind of rethought it when there were two people there. All right, maybe I can't 2v1, and kind of slowed down a little bit.
You know, that's the discipline that Optimus Gang has. If that's Deathwalker transformed, you know that man's holding W every step of the way.
He absolutely is. And would you go find him and tell him he's wrong?
No.
Not with all the success that man's had. So
I don't even look in the same direction of this guy. I look at my feet when he's around.
That's exactly right. So an excellent sort of career for Deathwalker, obviously, right? He's certainly earned the benefit of the doubt here at this point. And he is going to be going into some physical prots here early on. That makes a ton of sense up against the Camazotz and the Kukulkan. If there are going to be any other ganks, and he's going to need that physical protection, it's going to be extra effective for him because he's against two sources of physical.
Yeah. Electing to go into the Breastplate of Valor, it seems like. That's a good
It looks
pickup.
like, yeah.
CDR is going to be really nice here. Going to have that Defender of Olympus available more often. But we've seen her already make use of it 6 minutes in this game, finding a kill in the duo lane. Only going to be more of that going forward with all that additional CDR. Merlin in the middle lane has been left generally alone. No one's gone towards him, except for right now, Cal's looking for a gang.
Oh, Fusify, this is trouble. He does have the Scarab's Blessing. They proc it, and he should still be in range. The Shards of Ice are there, and PrettyPriMe and the boys clean up the kill. Easy as you like to shut down Fusify. It's the second kill they've gotten onto this bug so far.
Fusify is going to need to slow it down a little bit. Khepri, not unlike Freya, a lot better in the late, but also has lane clear, as you said earlier.
This could be some trouble. 3 members rotating over towards left.
Good
Kespainify
ult.
still has beads in the ult. And he's got them even now as he takes a trip back to base. That's 20 seconds that my man's going to be on the bench. An excellent rotation from Freshly Forged.
Credit where it's due, he tried to use Valkyrie's discretion there. Maybe if he had beats a little bit earlier, he would have got up in the air, but so far up the lane, I imagine he doesn't want to, use the zap beads, is it called? No, that's the boosh beads, just wasting them. At this point, if he uses it and he lands from his ultimate, he's dying either way. Khepri's not around to keep him alive, so I agree with that decision-making to just go ahead and let yourself fall there.
Xbalanque does end up having to take the spill, sort of as you mentioned, but certainly not the end of the world for this Freya. Certainly it's still going to have plenty of elements left, but it's sort of like you said, that's like one of the check boxes. It feels like you kind of have to mark in when you're up against the Freya lane. You got to come over and put her under at least some pressure and delay that power spike that we all know she's inevitably going to get to. Nice banish, but no tremendous follow-up happening from that one just yet. But still fails, despite that good gank, only level 7. Hold that thought, FaraKrik rotating over to the left-hand side. They're looking for an absolute brawl. Really no way that Collis can make it out of this one. Easy for FaraKrik to grab that one.
320 damage coming out of Zephyr at this point in the game. And that's what good itemization looks like on Kukulkan, by the way. Faeles going up in the air.
Kespainify is the target. He gets res, though, well timed. A good wall, though, from Faeles. That's about as clean as you could possibly see from him. The double kill in left, shutting down everything Optimus Gang were looking for. And it looks like they're just going to come right over the Gold Fury, because who could possibly stop them? Maybe FaraKrik. He's nearby. Can he make it in time to drop the ultimate? I don't know if he knows.
Use it?
A little too late, though. Not going to be able to get there in time, and Freshly Forged get the objective. And now the ultimate just on cooldown for FaraKrik, has to get on out of there.
And he also loses his beads there. Not available anymore. Josh is going to be obviously communicating that to Faeles, and Faeles, like a hungry Thor, just going to dunk down onto him. No Spear of the Nine wins the self-peel either. That should be a free kill insofar as Anvil of Dawn comes up pretty soon.
Yeah, Faeles will be looking for that one every day of the week. That's a huge play for Freshly Forged over and left. Really the entire sequence. The gank from Faeles into that Gold Fury, which they managed to secure despite FaraKrik running in. I mean, and I think it's just a lack of information for FaraKrik on that one. He couldn't have known how low the Gold Fury was when he finally got there. You start thinking about the decision-making. Is it worth trying to throw it out to risk stealing it or not? He ends up kind of sitting on his hands for an extra second or two.
And that's all it takes.
And he ends up getting nothing, right, in that final left-hand side. So that is the thin margins that we work with here in Smite.
Yeah, especially at this top level. But now that he's lost his beads and his ultimate's still down for just a little bit longer, it's going to come up around the same time as Thor's, up earlier actually. I imagine we're going to see the next team fight really originate in the middle lane and then cross over into the Pyromancer for whichever side wins that fight. Right now, Soul Lane, a bit of a nothing matchup. Athena, Deathwalker, not really looking to take any trades against Kukulkan, and rightfully so. You're not going to be fighting into Kukulkan very well.
Looks like you are going to be getting the Kukulkan build that you're a big fan of, though.
Oh, I do love it. I do be loving that. Book of Thoth into Breastplate of Valor, I do be loving that.
You're on the record as saying so.
All right, to be fair, let me justify the stance I took earlier. Chad, if you've been around a long time, I'll go ahead and say it. Optimus Gang pulling the Pyromancer. Breastplate of Valor does very well with Kukulkan's passive. It's a lot of mana that transfers directly into power. However, if you are 20,000 gold down, you need to build some penetration to counter the XP and gold lead that the enemy team has. If you're in the lead, however, or even, it's fine.
Fusify has been gobbled up. That's his 4th spill of the game. Looks like Freshly Forged. We're in the mood for lobster? Is that the skin he was rocking?
He is certainly a lobster right now, but Joshy looking for some aggression with the help of Athena.
Valkyrie's discretion pretty good, as is Defender of Olympus. The mitigation comes through strong, and Joshy claims that kill. Kespainify looked like he really didn't have many options there. FaraKrik in some trouble too. That ultimate doesn't find much, and Faeles gets out of that one easily after taking the cooldowns away from FaraKrik. This is a much better game from Freshly Forged, but this is what it's been like watching them, isn't it? It's been like night and day. Like, it's a different team sometimes. Like, they lock in at different levels sometimes in the match, and I think that 50-minute-er last time might have kind of lit the fires a little bit.
I mean, that 5-kill disparity is there in favor of Freshly Forged. However, if you take a look at the gold, Optimus Gang sitting right pretty and only 800 experience split between 5 people. They're not playing the map very well right now. Optimus Gang, on the other hand, playing the map very well.
I think it's because Zek's just kind of kept his head down and farmed this game. He has not ganked. He has not been rotated to these fights. My man has been farming, and just kind of chilling for the most part. Also, Athena going to not be able to keep up with farm as much as LeMoGoW. Fusify yet again being caught out. potentially being punished, but is able to survive the onslaught this time, so he's going to make it out of there A-OK. Collis might be the one that's in a little bit of trouble, but he makes it out of there too. But LeMoGoW making an early rotation. I don't think they know. Blink into the two-man knock-up, but can't find it with the ultimate from the Kukulkan on the back end. The freeze comes through, though, and Zek's able to lock down Collis for a critical kill. LeMoGoW does find one push and a prime, but they can't fully punish him. Zephyr and the Tornado can't quite get into range either. That's a good fight for Optimus Gang. Maybe they could have got a bit more, but that's definitely still a good fight.
The discipline there to not stick around with Fusify so low, I do appreciate that. There's no real objectives on the map. Pyromancer, dead. Gold Fury, dead. They can't really push into a tower alone. PrettyPriMe is low, but with Athena there, you have to respect her. Missed the taunt, though.
We're looking for Deathwalker now. The Abduct has Deathwalker locked down. He's plenty tanky, though. Faeles. Comes right for Fusify in the back. Big hammer and a big wall prime. Gets Zek and FaraKrik's low in the back. Joshy. Everybody eating this time as everyone get to one. Freshly forged. Really starting to show what they're capable of here in this game. But kind of as you've said, they hadn't really built much of a lead up until now. Now that fight gets them about 2.5, almost 3,000 gold worth of separation. So that's relevant. I said all that. Certainly not true. Only about 600 gold worth of separation. So, okay, yeah, not much separation.
I mean, that's a little bit more gold now. You were predicting where they were going to go afterward. Now it's looking at 1,200 gold. LeMoGoW in a little bit of trouble. Could go the other way, but transforming. Joshy, you're in a little bit of trouble, bud. Be careful.
He is. LeMoGoW might be able to make this trade happen. At the very least, gets the Aegis out from Joshy. He's certainly going to end up falling here. That freeze would have made things easier, but they don't need it. Faeles has had an excellent game so far, and no reason why that would slow down now, as he finds even more damage here in this next fight. Jotuns into Warrior Tabi. Likely Transcendence, we're thinking next to follow that up. My man's going to be swinging.
Yeah, we do like that build. That's how I like to see my Hachimans build 100% of the time. Interesting to point out there that Joshy loses his Aegis. Didn't really need to, though. Callus walled off the ultimate from Kukulkan, so maybe a bit of a miscommunication there. Not enough trust as Optimus Gang goes ahead and pulls the Oni Fury.
Optimus Gang, the ones with the objective mindset. They secure the Oni Fury, though probably a lot closer than he would have liked. Zek is the one in some trouble, but he manages to make it back out of there with that bat out of hell on the full retreat path, but Thor took to the sky. Faeles searching for a target. He does manage to find FaraKrik, but doesn't get much out of it. Even though he lands right on him, has to get out of there right away. And Optimus Gang grab the objective and make it out of there.
They've really stopped the bleed, and that's all they need to do right now, because their late game is so potent off the back of Zek, off the back of FaraKrik, and this Freya from Kespainify. However, Ymir on the backside, watch out.
Should have Kespainify caught off guard here. The beads are there for him. Finally does end up using them. Takes to the sky with the Valkyrie's discretion, but they take care of the tower. That means they can keep up the chase. Perfect wall. Even bringing in the horse. How much did you need him? That's another excellent fight for Freshly Forged. But could they get punished as FaraKrik and the rest of the boys start to show up? They're looking for Joshy first and foremost. Zek, who had a great game one, is here to clean up the kill. Not really sure where Collis can go from this point either, but he's going to run as much as he can. Yeah, likely not going to make it out of this one. Where do they go in the 4Kids version? You just die in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! But
they go to the Shadow Realm in 4Kids.
Right.
They go to the grave in Japan.
Yeah, in Japan it's over, bud. And that's what happened here in this one. Faeles is now in the fight. He wants to try and get involved a bit too. Isn't going to find much. Actually, really decent damage from PrettyPriMe onto FaraKrik, but they're fully on the retreat path now, are Freshly Forged. It's Optimus Gang who are skulking around for what they can find in the jungle. But really not much is up now. They're waiting on this red buff to spawn. They'll strip that one away, and then they'll get out of here.
So this is the nature of these teeter-totter-esque games where, you know, you win a fight, but the objective's already dead, so you go get the other objective. So last time, Freshly Forged won the fight. They got the Pyromancer, then Optimus Gang sneaks away the Gold Fury, and now there's no objectives that are easily taken off the back of these one fights. So these leads can't grow exponentially. It's really just got to wait for these objectives to respawn as such.
Pyromancer being looked at now by Optimus Gang. And Freshly Forged are close. Faeles definitely knows this is happening. He's going to take to the sky with the Anvil of Dawn, but already on the full retreat is Optimus Gang, so Faeles finds nothing with that ultimate. Just kind of has to head back and start licking his wounds. Collis does get the freeze onto FaraKrik, but FaraKrik remains calm, doesn't use the purification beads. He must have known that there wasn't much backup there for him. Another sick wall from Collis, but there's just no follow-up. The CDs weren't there, and the rest of Optimus Gang can make it out.
All that mechanical skill coming out from Callus, but the decision-making isn't quite there. He was in the backline, surrounded by three, completely alone, now caught out by the Kukulkan.
And LeMoGoW going to keep right on moving. He's the one without much backup this time, but he is in that rage transformation. They've got Collis dead to rights. It's the bat out of hell from Zek that cleans up the kill, even beyond the tier 1 tower now, taking the fight with Joshy, who has to use his Aegis just so he can survive. The Freya banish forces out the beads as well, and Zek gets yet another kill in this engagement, and now the Scarab's Blessing's on him too, so you can't even kill him. Another strong fight for Optimus Gang as they're on the retreat.
Nice tornadoes. Deathwalker in a little bit of trouble here, falling fast, doesn't find the taunt. Looks like it might fizzle out here as they content themselves with this tier 1 tower. Not even, just gonna back out completely.
A bit surprised they're not able to get the actual tower, but hard to complain when the fight went so well for Optimus Gang, right? So certainly won't be writing them any angry letters or anything like that. Zek has been huge for this team, hasn't he? All day long. So
all day long, especially on this god that Freshly Forged let through again.
Yeah, very good god Camazotz is. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Zek. He's played well on it, but like I said earlier, when you got the right tools, it's easier to do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference, right? You could be really good at Minecraft, but a diamond pick is always going to go through stone faster, right?
And this is the diamond pick?
This is.
In form of Camazotz, at the very least. Now I can't stop thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! And how they censored it here in America.
I mean, they certainly did. Shadow Realm, I think at one point there's a character in Yu-Gi-Oh! That pulls a gun, but they only use their fingers in the 4Kids version.
Well, there's a point where they fall through the ceiling, and in Japan, you hit the ground, and it's game over, bud. But in America, there was like purple fog they fell into, I think, or something like that.
The fluffy purple fog of trampoline-ness?
It was like, oh man, that's too bad, as opposed to instant death that they felt in
I'll try again tomorrow rather than you're going to have to pay for my gravestone.
Yeah, but maybe we needed to soften that blow. Yeah, maybe they had the right idea. Fusify wouldn't mind having this one softened a bit too as he's trapped in between 3. Gets him back up though as LeMoGoW comes in alongside Zek, and Zek goes right to the back line looking for Faeles. Good hammer allows him to teleport out, but Zek cannot be satiated, keeps right on going, looking for more. Can't lock down Faeles, so he heads back to the squad to see if they can lock down Kha'Lis. Tornado doesn't find a whole lot. Kha'Lis, actually with the no juke, avoids quite a bit of the damage, but ends up dying either way. LeMoGoW gets the kill credit, can't quite catch up to FaraKrik, but the spin is enough for the kill. He wants Fusify as well, but Kespainify elsewhere has shut down Prime, and now Fusify way too low to stick around in the fight any longer.
Joshy coming around the backside, has to be careful of that. Finds his target in the Fusify, but the fight continues. LeMoGoW taking a little bit too much damage as Thor finds the sick wall.
Joshy gonna try and keep these shots going. He's about the best hope for Freshly Forged right now. He's got himself a double kill, making a triple as he takes down Kespainify as well. Zek gets taunted back in. Joshy with the quadra kill. Deicide coming out for Freshly Forged as well as they send Optimus Gang running for the hills. They've only got 2 of them. It's 20 minutes in. They should be able to do this Fire Giant.
Relatively easy as well. They're level 19, late game, very close to full build. Joshy, though, quadra kill. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, my man's kind of showing up for their squad, isn't he? And they absolutely needed it. That fight could easily have gone wrong for him. But instead, Joshy shows up, finds a pretty big kill for them. Now it's Fire Giant time as well, and they can start looking to make some sieges. But Optimus Gang have a pretty decent siege comp. I like this. They're going to wait, let Faeles come back up so everyone can get the Fire Giant spawn. Or Fire Giant.
We don't need Faeles to get the Fire Giant, all right? Joshy is this team. Found so much there. I want to know who took away that other kill. It's stealing away the Penta.
I don't know.
Me either. But Fire Giant goes the way of Freshly Forged. You're going to be able to move down through the towers now. This is the first real substantial lead we've seen this game. FaraKrik going to get poked out by PrettyPriMe. Not a huge deal. They're going to have to play on the back foot either way. Optimus Gang, that is. As Freshly Forged can go ahead, return to base, spend that gold they got off the fight, as well as, you know, get ready for this Fire Giant push.
But again, I think Optimus Gang have a lot of tools to make this defense happen, right? I mean, the Kukulkan is about one of the best gods you can ask for when you're on base defense, so that's certainly strong. But what about the rest of these tools? Freya Banish, I always talk about how strong I think that tool is as well. I think Optimus Gang, if this game still stays relatively even like it is, I think they might be able to put up some relatively strong defenses.
Well, their defense is so absolutely powerful. Abduct, a huge tool, able to stop anyone that steps even a little bit out of line, just going to drag them in. For Freya to be the chainsaw that she is, just chipping away at him, as well as you said, FaraKrik on this Kukulkan, going to be able to drop tornadoes, keep waves out, as well as that huge teamfight ultimate that can truly turn games from just about any point as long as you have a little bit of penetration in your build, which he does in the Spear of Desolation. Really proud of him for that.
You'd love to see it.
Kukulkan going to be really potent in this fight, but Kukulkan, on the other hand, getting poked out a little bit early.
Yeah, LeMoGoW kind of getting shredded on that front line so far on the wall, cut off the escape path. Joshy has been a man on a mission all game long, and he's not stopping now. The mounted archery pops up and finds the shot, and LeMoGoW, you have to take a seat for the next 50 seconds. Another good wall, but Fusify responds with a good abduct. That's going to be it for Faeles, but it costs Fusify his life as well. A 2-for-1 trade in favor of the aggressing team. It's going to favor them every single time. Deathwalker forces out the beads from Zek, and to the sky goes Faeles, knowing he's got some prime targets to land on. Kespainify goes right to the sky, returns some decent damage, but now right to the back line. I love the way they worked that together. The Anvil of Dawn paired up with that Defender of the Olympus. No way to defend that one. Faeles starts shredding through FaraKrik, and suddenly it's just Kespainify left.
That could be game, but Deathwalker has to go back to base here, so they might just have to back up, get ready for the next objective. The only thing that's really neutrally up... Oh, Deathwalker TP'd back in. I take it back. Say goodbye to your Titan, bud.
Yep, this should be game number 2. And really, I'm not too surprised that it's been such a back-and-forth set here, right, between these two, as the Titan now comes down to about half HP. Joshy unstoppable now with 7 in a row. Got to make sure we at least dot our I's and cross our T's here and make sure Freshly Forged can clean this game up here properly. Optimus Gang trying to make the defense happen, but just no way they're going to be able to overwhelm Freshly Forged, not with the warpath they were on this game.
I mean, Joshy, really the standout player there. He did so much damage in every team fight, even barring the quadra kill, which I won't. Quadra kills are sick. We're going to talk about it right now. It was nuts. I'm mad he didn't get the penta. It could have been easily achieved. However, 23 minutes, that's a convincing game.
It is.
Certainly.
And it started off on a really good note for them. I mean, remember that very early Thor gank that they had from Faeles? That set them off to a really good start. They made sure they kept Kespainify down this game. They didn't allow that Freya to take over. Zek had a much less impressive game here, too. I do think he still played well, but nowhere near the carry potential we saw from him in game 1.
Zek didn't really have the potential to step off the ground as he did before because each of his lanes were already losing by the time that he had come online. Once you get that second item online is when junglers start to pop off, but Zek didn't have that kind of time to get ready.
That's game number 2. Game number 3, the decider match, going to be coming up in just a few minutes.
Game 2 takes almost exactly half the amount of time as Game 1, and it's different in that Freshly Forged were able to grab the win this time around. Much more clean, convincing performance out of them in Game 2. Gormaz are still with me to talk about it. What more do you need to say other than Faeles on that Thor and Joshy on that Hachiman?
Yeah, that's it. We're done.
All right, roll it. Game
Awesome.
3, let's
Game
go.
3, yeah, no, we can start it. No, it's just they did so well from the beginning of the game.
Sure.
I think that was the biggest difference. A lot of the fights in Game 1 were back and forth, push and pull. You take the Gold Fury, we got 4 kills. Pretty much comes out as a wash. This one was a lot more controlled. Biggest, I don't even know where the words I'm trying to go for with, compliments to Optimus Gang because of the fact that there were a lot of times where they're losing these fights, they're losing kills, and yet they're still controlling the objectives. Early on, things slowly but surely just fell out of their hands as the game went on, and I think that's just the way that Freshly Forged play, and that's something that they kind of have to be aware of going into game number 3, that, yeah, you know what? Yes, because you were able to hold up a little bit early game does not translate into the late game at all.
Yeah, still not horribly sloppy from Optimus Gang, but they don't grab themselves the win. Clean is the way I would describe Freshly Forged this time around. 0-0-17, squeaky clean for Deathwalker. Grabs himself the Undying and 17 assists to boot. 10-2-11 for Joshy, breaking that double digits kill category.
Yeah, and almost tripling the amount of damage that we saw out of Kespainify. And that's kind of the big difference.
Yeah,
and that's
big
where
difference.
my eyes went. You have some really good slash lines from Faeles and Joshy, really good plays from them as well. But the thing that stood out the most to me is the fact that they banned this Freya in Game 1, it comes through in Game 2, and they shut it down. They did not let this get off the ground at all. The duo lane overall for Optimus Gang was nothing. It never got to come out to anything. Kind of like Mifflin was saying towards the end of it, was most of the lanes all across the board were too far behind for that Camazotz to start making ganks that were meaningful. And Freya, 10,000 damage in this game. I mean, it's a low game for her. She was 4-6, so she was able to get some good kills towards the late game, as you would expect out of a Freya, but Joshy got off the ground early and was able to run the show.
Yeah, he was able to capitalize on the setup that the rest of the team provided him. Quadra kill at one point throughout this game. You don't often see that And in a very flashy performance, Joshy is able to help
Yeah.
Freshly Forged move themselves towards victory. And I like the way you bring up the Freya having a third of the amount of damage as the Hunter on Freshly Forged. But Kukulkan for FaraKrik had half as much damage as PrettyPriMe. You don't often see that. Even in losing games, Kukulkan sometimes will find their way into that top damage conversation just by nature of his kit.
Well, it's like these little moments because Tornado gives you kind of free damage if you hit somebody. If you hit a tank, it's just going to inflate your numbers more than it's actually going to kill them. But there were a lot of moments. My mind goes to a mid lane fight, I think under the tier 1, and there was a Thor wall that comes down. And normally I follow that up with, it found a stun, he hit a double tap, and it's a kill.
Right.
It blocked Deathwalker from dashing into a tornado and dying in it. And it's like moments like that where it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Like if you're FaraKrik there, you're like, I put it in the right spot. It was going to get damage. It would have found a kill. And if you go back and ask it, there's no way Faeles actually intended for that wall to block
he
it.
meant that to happen,
Fully
right?
calculated, absolutely. But like those little moments where it's just like that kill is no longer a kill. They're still on the board. And Deathwalker as Athena rotating into these fights either through teleport or Defender of Olympus was just such a huge impact for them. Yeah, his farm was a little slower to get started, but who cares? He's in the fight. Taunt is so good as an ability that it made the biggest difference for him. And Freshly Forged just got off running, and they completely annihilated Optimus Gang that time.
They grabbed their small lead, forged that one, Freshly Forged that one into a win for game number 2. We've had a lot of conversations about Thor, I think, and how he's still been prioritized. He's still been a power pick and a power ban for a lot of these teams. But every once in a while when he gets picked up, and maybe more so recently, he hasn't shown us what we expect out of a top-tier pick. But I think Faeles that game on Thor really shows us how to grab that lead, make good use of it, and maybe why Thor is still considered in that top tier.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these last 3 weeks have given us both sides
Yes,
of
we
Thor,
have seen
right?
both,
Where it's
right.
like we've seen a Thor who's been picked and has literally done nothing, and a Thor in that game that helped his team get to the point where they could fully find themselves a victory. And it's little picks like that that have come through. Faeles specifically, in my mind, has been huge just because of the fact that, again, he has a very deep god pool in the jungle, and it makes a huge difference for your team as a whole when you can just rely on him to be flexible and consistent.
We're returning to a level of normalcy here with the first 6 bans. Remember in the before game 2, we had 2 Guardians banned out. That opened the door to a lot of different picks to maybe start off that round. Camazotz and Merlin, though, those are pretty standard across the board. Camazotz more so maybe than Merlin, but Merlin absolutely has been in that top tier of mid laner conversation.
Well, and the thing for Freshly Forged here is, again, the flexibility that comes through. Is this Kukulkan going to have to match up against Camazotz, or is this Kukulkan kind of showing your hand early and is going to end up against something like King Arthur that we saw them play a little earlier on? Camazotz is flexible enough to make it just work.
And Raijin locked in now, not somebody we often see. 4% pick rate to be exact in the EU SCC qualifiers. What do you like about him?
Good damage.
Sure.
Good dot damage as well on top of him. My favorite thing about Raijin has to be his ult, though. I mean, the ability to fear, taunt, or just do damage, if that's really where you want to be, is so helpful for your team. The only issue I can have with it is, again, there are other mages, maybe that don't do the same thing better, but that hit what you want out of your mid laner a little bit more. I think there's going to be some good damage from this Raijin. I just don't know if he's the second pick for your team, right? I think if you put him down in those bottom like 4 and 5 spots for Freshly Forged, then it maybe meshes a little bit better. Because it's not like he's super high priority. Like, Optimus Gang aren't going to take it away from you. And so you could lock in something maybe a little bit higher up there for you just to guarantee you have that stronger pick.
Well, Optimus Gang are going to opt to try the Freya one more time. And talk about gods that we don't see all that often. Ganesh locked in as well. I mean, in lane, you get the stun, you get the silence, some good damage. And for a lot of these fights that are starting to break out in the jungle, that ultimate can prove so potent as well. Why don't we maybe see the Ganesh a little bit more?
Honestly, I can't tell you, because when I look at it, Ganesh is like sleeper OP in my eyes. You kind of enlightened me to this, but after like looking at it, that silence is really, really solid, and it lasts forever. It is so much of a pain when you're just like, all I need, like, I need one hit on that guy to kill him, and Ganesh is just like, yeah, but I'm gonna sit here for 3 seconds, and you're just gonna chill on that. Like, I'm gonna silence you into control, like knocking you up and just locking you down. He's a really good Guardian.
He's great, and Achilles is going to be locked in, putting that 100% win rate on the line. A variety of new picks, low percent pick rate here for Freshly Forged. Do you like what they've brought to the table for the third and final game?
I like it, although I will say there's a lot of unconventional in some of it. I think the Raijin, maybe not the Ganesh, but the X-Ball as well, Xbalanque is going to be put to the test here. I think they have a lot of what it takes to make it work, but there's a lot of effort probably falling on the Camazotz and the Naja, who will be roaming around the jungle to make it work. Optimus Gang are very much tried and true.
Well, Freshly Forged finally make their way into a finals. We got one final game, Game 3. John Finch, it's all yours.
Couldn't imagine it going any other way, Dolson. Unevenly matched set here, and so far it's been exactly that. Hard fought throughout, and I imagine we'll be in for another hard fought battle here in game number 3. Though, to be honest, game 2 didn't seem all that hard fought, did it? I mean, Freshly Forged kind of ran him over. So
Yeah, 22 minutes it only took. Half the time it took Optimus Gang to win. Freshly Forged is looking pretty fresh here. No pun intended. However, I think it's interesting to point out, Deathwalker finally taking that Camazotz for himself, taking it off of our boy Zek as well. He's been doing so well on it this set. A little bit less so last game, but we can't really fault him for that. Deathwalker on Camazotz, he's been playing aggressively the entirety of today. A long day it has been as well. This is the last game. These guys have been playing Smite for what, 6-7 hours now?
It's been a while, huh?
Yeah, they've got to be tired at this point. But Hand of the Gods coming out from Xing. He's done it every game, and it looks like he's going to go ahead and use it to try and drop this red buff on his own. Not even. He's just going to solo it.
Fusify starting up at PrettyPriMe, I think, started to smell that out. So we did end up losing some of that camp, but he'll get there in time to at least clean up the remainder. Meanwhile, the duo lane of a Freshly Forged went up and looked like they stripped away the opposing team's Alpha Harpy, then came back over to the wave. So if you have two that can DPS relatively well, it's a good use of your time. Good banish from Kespainify. That might have been death for Fusify, particularly had that not landed. So a quick little interaction there from them to buy his support a little bit of extra time. But we don't see much Xbalanque, I feel like, much anymore nowadays, but we're seeing him here for Joshy. I feel like whenever Crit's good, Xbalanque is good, though, right?
Yeah,
so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, Xbalanque benefits so much from Crit. His branching Vola gives him so much additional damage. The team fight coming out, Zek finding his early gank.
Finds the stun. This is certainly trouble now for Faeles. And it could potentially be trouble for Freshly Forged in general. When Zek gets off to a good start, it seems like it's good things, but Faeles rotates in, cuts off that gank, and Faeles makes it out of there easy peasy. That's actually pretty huge from Faeles to get over there and stop that in its tracks. I was just about to say that when Zek has a good game, Optimus Gang almost look like a different team, but not going to have that happen just yet.
It's a good job slowing him down. That's also a mirror of what we normally see. It's usually Faeles going over there a little bit early to find the gank, but Zek got the better end of the rotation there. Surprising enough, because Naja, his clear in the jungle is so quick, but Deathwalker doing exactly what we'd expect to see from Camazotz, just bullying out our boy on the Kukulkan. 2-1 combo found. This guy's just going to have to heal up for a little bit. LeMoGoW, how are you going to recover from this, bud? No way to know. Deathwalker's so potent in this lane.
It's a pretty tough position to be in because you just definitely can't match Camazotz's sustain. You just saw all that heal that comes off from Devour. So at this point, it's just going to be an HP deficit for him here in lane. He's probably just going to have to give up a lot of positioning. No more potions available to him either. Just trying to buy time until that next back. That's free reign for Deathwalker over in that lane then, probably for a while, unless some junglers come over to try and help reset.
Nice rotation from Kala's going to go ahead and strip away this blue buff from LeMoGoW. Not as punishing as it would be from another solo laner. No mana really needed for the side of Kukulkan. You know, it's a little bit of additional health and cooldown that he would have had otherwise, but not the biggest deal. They're going to go ahead and solo away that blue buff on Deathwalker's side, though, electing not to give him any real lead and experience. Instead, going to give that over to the Elephant. Kalas now having additional cooldown percent. Going to look pretty good going into the lane. And Gore brought it up on the desk. That silence is incredibly potent, but he forgot to mention that it's the protection aura that comes out as well that is so good. In the late game, pretty equivalent to the Ares aura. Going to give you about 60 protections globally to anyone within the circle around them. That's so powerful. It's almost like another active at that point. It's a little bit more potent than Shell even.
It's pretty strong, and one of those parts of Ganesh's kit that can be kind of easy to overlook, but certainly potent. This is just a strong Guardian right now, is Ganesh. I mean, I think it was Solar or Troll who was lamenting how strong Ganesh was the other day on Twitter or something like that, so certainly this guy can cause fits for just about everybody out there. So I imagine that someone as capable as Faeles can certainly show us that high end here as well. But there's another thing. If you're going to name yourself Freshly Forged, which I must assume is based off the Raijin line. And you got to play some Raijin here, right? And that's what PrettyPriMe has done, picked up the Raijin for him.
Yeah, Raijin is also a very interesting pick in that we don't see it very often. He's not super great in the early game. Early game is where he really struggles. He can find the clear, kind of, but not nearly as well as the other channel gods like Isis. But you had a pretty good impression of Raijin earlier in the back green room. You want to give me the, how's it go? Nothing better in the hand than a freshly forged blade,
Man,
or something like
You
that.
can't fumble the execution there.
I'm sorry, man.
No, but I'm right there with you, man. Raijin feels great. Maybe not excellent in the early game, but certainly there's some points in the game where Raijin does feel strong. I mean,
oh, at level 20, he's one of the best mages you can have. Ganesha going to force out Kespainify's ult. It's going to be a little bit harder for him to sit pretty in that lane. And the gank potential from the elephant, that dash, that's a whole lot of lockdown CC, followed by the silence. It's not going to be as bad into Freya. She's got the channel on her too that can't really be silenced off, but if she doesn't have it on, she won't be able to use it while that's on her.
certainly wouldn't be able to, so that'll be backing off at least for now. I mean, we've had two very different games so far, right? The game number one that we saw, that one went like almost 50 minutes. It was this really long, drawn-out match with a lot of like prolonged engagements around the Fire Giant. Then game number two was mostly Faeles and Joshy just kind of starting to run away with it. They ran it over in 22 minutes. Just kind of based on the drafts, which one does it look like we're seeing more of here? There's not quite as much of that early game pressure as we saw in game number two, so maybe this one could be a little bit of a longer one. But I mean, if Zek can get out to a good start in Achilles is certainly someone that can run a game pretty well.
I mean, looking over the side of Optimus Gang, it looks like they're really electing to go for the late game. They have the Merlin, they've got the Xing, and they got the Freya, and those gods only get better as the game goes on. But if you look at freshly forged side, Naja, Camazotz, and Xbalanque, Xbalanque a little bit less so, but they are so potent in the early as this team fight erupts around the mid-Harpies.
Darkest of Nights to shut off the lights. That means Fusify has got to head all the way back to the Tier 1 tower for now. Rather defensive positioning from Optimus Gang so far. Deathwalker, on the other hand, feeling himself, steps up into the 1v2. Still has Bat out of Hell, so nothing to worry about, at least for now. He has that escape tool if he really needs it, plus Devour with that extended range is pretty good for getting him out of there too. So really not much trouble for Deathwalker in that matchup. Just going to step and see what he could find in that solo lane. So you kind of feel like they're both somewhat late game skewed compositions, you'd say, as Deathwalker has got LeMoGoW relatively low, but a new set of fresh cooldowns should help LeMoGoW get out of it.
I mean, nothing new for LeMoGoW. He's been getting bullied this entire 7 minutes. And that's, you know, that's to be expected. Kukulkan, he is a fight god, but no one fights harder than the Bat out of Hell. Camazotz going to be going straight in the entire time, and Camazotz as well, such a safe pick. Similarly, the Freya can remove himself from the playfield and use it to reposition himself as far away as he wants. But Deathwalker going for a little bit more.
Wow.
LeMoGoW, first blood going the way of freshly forged.
That's huge from Deathwalker, man. He's had pressure there all in, and eventually he's going to come to collect. That's first blood for freshly forged. And really, it's a bad sign, man, when Deathwalker gets off to a start like that on a pick like Camazotz, then is able to take the trip back to base. I think he picked up the Ninja tab. I was slightly surprised by that. And then has another round shield to work with there next, too. So he's got plenty at his disposal, and will even be able to auto-trade relatively well now, too.
That is a strange pickup. Ninja Tabi traditionally goes towards the hunters who can really benefit off that attack speed. Camazotz gets so much burst out of his abilities, you'd expect to see the Warriors Tabi. This secondary shield, I imagine, could be either Shifters or Void. I'm leaning towards Void. It's the better item by and large. As Faeles, go ahead, take him up in the air. Zek, you're in a little trouble, bud.
Yeah, Zek does not have Purification Beads. He elected to go Blink, the much more aggressive item, but one that works very well with Achilles when you can get that freeway in. Zek does make it out of there, though it ends up costing him his own ultimate in trade. But as long as he didn't die, that's pretty critical. Deathwalker, though, wow, I'm surprised he wasn't willing to keep chasing there. He still had Bat out of Hell, but he gives up on it and falls back as Collis avoids the aggression, maybe not, gets caught by the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel and gets brought right back into FaraKrik's waiting grass, gets cooked by the Merlin damage, and Optimus Gang get their first kill.
And that's the unfortunate part of Raijin in the early game. Couldn't really do much off of that. Maybe if a Kraken came through, he could have returned the kill on Fusify. Instead, he's the Lightning God. I know Aggro loves him some Lightning, but Raijin in the early, it's not great. And it's so bad, in fact, I'm not sure that it justifies as late. But if this game does go late, that's when PrettyPrime's really going to be able to pop off and start dealing some damage.
And Prime has been willing to pick some some late game stuff, hasn't he? I mean, he took the outpost earlier on, and I don't know that ever truly, came online, and now we're here watching the Raijin. We'll see. But that's another thing with PrettyPriMe, man. As long as he's played, he's kind of had his own god pool, his own thoughts about what stuff's good in the middle lane. And I like that, man. I feel like you want people on your team who trust in their own evaluations, and Prime is that kind of guy, man. So we'll see if it ends up working out for them. As Zek comes in to look for some pressure. Has to fall back to the tier 1 tower, though, as Faeles finds a nice sash of his own. Freshly Forged decide to give up on the pressure.
Speaking of Zek, take a look at his build there. He elected for the Ninja Tabi as well.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. These gods don't really benefit as much from the attack speed. I mean, if you're on a melee god and you go attack speed, that means you're expecting to go for an extended fight, as Kespainify is going to get his ult forced out by Joshy, get a lot of return damage there, but he is and very close to dead.
Yeah,
Fusify on the backside, though.
This could be trouble for Joshy now, but Fusify didn't want to commit. Very surprised. Thought at least they might look for a beads force there, but I think they had the information that Collis was nearby and didn't love that fight, especially in a world where Kespainify absolutely had to back.
Ooh,
as
PrettyPriMe.
does PrettyPriMe, as he just got caught by FaraKrik there in the middle lane. So they elected not to step up and pressure Joshy on the Xbalanque that time, and no harm, no foul.
It looks like both teams are playing a little bit more cautious than we've seen earlier, especially from Freshly Forged. These guys, they might as well be W key forged as far as I'm concerned. However, it looks like both are really trying to get this seeding going. This is the most I've seen from both sides as far as hesitant play, but Faeles getting picked out a little bit as he sits in that Ice Storm, dropping fast, loses the beads, and uses ult to escape. That's good play. Nice jukes.
Yeah, Faeles able to make it out of there quite nicely. That could have easily been a bad situation. Deathwalker has a ton of pressure in this lane, but he might finally have bit off a little bit more than he can chew in this matchup. He chooses to stick around, using those last extra hits for damage on the LeMoGoW, so clearly trusts the trade. Still has Devour in the back pocket.
Nice
That's
jump.
for a big heal and gets him over the dash. Meanwhile, Kespainify is in some trouble here in left. Kept him silenced, and even though Collis got banished, Joshy didn't. That's an easy cleanup kill for the Xbalanque, and Prime once more goes in aggressively with the Thunder Crash, catches him with the Taiko drums. That's a one more for Freshly Forged.
That was smart use of the fear to push away the Achilles, but it wasn't quite enough as the execute comes through. Faeles getting picked out a little bit here. Has to use the sash to escape the damage.
Second strike of the Fatal Strike doesn't quite land. Fusify very low, and Deathwalker would love to clean that one up, but still hasn't been able to hit it. Zek does get Faeles as well. Deathwalker, I think eventually will be able to grab this kill. Does put Fusify down to make it a delayed 2 for 2. So these have been some extended jungle skirmishes. Right when we talked about that sort of careful, calculated play, they kind of got back to what we've been seeing from them all day long and just looking for fights.
Yeah, just got to get back in the saddle. You know, it's a fresh game. You don't really know what you're capable of, so you fight a little bit less. But now that we're seeing the double digits in the levels, I think we're going to see a bit more arena-like in these matches. Kespainify just going to keep sitting over here, farming up exactly like you see Freya do. She hasn't been able to get off the ground just quite yet as she would like to. You know, Freshly Forged showed a lot of respect for the Freya in that first game, banning it away. Second game, let it through again. I imagine Kespainify is a little bit upset about that, losing the respect throughout the course of the set as Callis gets picked out a little bit.
He was looking for the red buff invade and ends up having to give up a lot of HP for the privilege. Fusify does manage to lock down Faeles, so doesn't have the beads in the 45 seconds, but he managed to make it out of there A-OK. There really wasn't that much follow-up. The Taiko drums from Prime was more defensive than anything, and he's...
Huge damage.
Yeah, he gets some damage certainly out of it, but certainly not a ton, and that'll be it for Freshly Forged. They're falling back for now.
Freshly Forged really needs to just group up around PrettyPriMe and start playing around him as well. If they can get any sort of pick, both objectives are available on the map, and they've got relatively decent objective burn on both sides. Merlin, one of the fastest gods to kill any objective on the map.
Yeah.
Maybe he loses out a little bit on the side of confirming the objective, doesn't have any huge burst ability like that. However, you know, when you can just shred something so quickly, you don't need it. It opens up the map for sneaking objectives rather than stealing.
You're right, man. Merlin is so much for your objective DPS, man. That's one of those additional strengths that he adds, on top of just being just a generally good mage all around, too. So I'm right there with you in terms of that additional value that FaraKrik's going to be able to bring. I mean, Kespainify, not a slouch in that category either. So if you give this team some time, they'll certainly be able to burn through those objectives quickly. Freshly Forged have to keep their eyes on it. But look at this gold lead already. They're up about 4,000 gold. 5,000 experience, too. A lot of that disparity, I think, is in the solo lane between Deathwalker and LeMoGoW. It's been a really good early game for Freshly Forged so far.
Oh, watch out.
But Optimus Gang want to try and shut that down. Fusify blinks in. Prime has already dipped out by Thunder crashing over the wall. They want to lock down Kespainify inside the Dharmic Pillars. Faeles comes in with the sash. Can't find much more, but Fusify locks down Kalis. And Kespainify gets the kill credit for it. Optimus Gang now on the full retreat, but Joshy will not let them leave for free. Gets the kill on the Kespainify to make it 1-for-1.
Joshy's been shredding through these fights as PrettyPriMe picks up Zek.
Hi.
Deathwalker going to be
Hi.
looking for this Merlin. Might have it. The flicker's not available. Now it is, but Bat Out of Hell is going to go ahead and clean that one up. I imagine we see someone go for Gold Fury, but instead Freshly Forged is going to go ahead and take the permanent objective in the mid tower. That's going to open up the map a lot. However, Gold Fury going to fall as well, it seems. Fusify, the only one really able to move in. Xing doesn't have any real steal potential. They know it's going down and they can't do anything about it. But looks like he's going to like to try anyway.
He should be able to disrupt this at least somewhat, but as you said, his chances of actually stealing it shouldn't be high, especially if Faeles commits the Windfire wheels. Freshly Forged, confirm the objective. Should be able to get this kill on the Fusify as well. He does force out this Aegis from PrettyPriMe.
Nice Aegis.
But they get the kill anyway. Deathwalker's had a monster performance here so far. It was indeed the Void Shield as you requested in that third slot too. And he's become a problem that there's just not an answer to.
And that's what Camazotz has done these entirety of these qualifiers. He just gets out of control instantly, barring last game, but I'm not going to fault Zek on that. He's had an amazing set. Camazotz, however, Deathwalker piloting him 4-0-1 at 15 minutes. What did you call the gold lead a moment ago? 4,000? We're going to go ahead and call that 6 now. Going on 7, actually. My math bad. 10,000 experience, however, at 15 minutes. That is a huge deal.
Yeah, this hasn't been the math set for us, has it?
No, we're pretty dumb, huh?
Listen, we're casters, not mathematicians, all right? You know, don't give us a hard time or anything like that over it. As Joshy catches out Kespainify. My man's level 17, by the way. Woo! If you want to take this fight, I'm sure he'd be happy to. Valkyrie's discretion, he'll be here for you when you land. The Banish, probably the best tool that she has.
Joshy,
trying to hide inside the mini wave, but Kespainify has turnaround potential. Uses the Banish, but was too far out of range for those poison darts to connect. Joshy, you could tell he's hungry for the kill, but Zek is on his way to this one. I think Joshy might have committed too much inside the actual wave, and Zek puts him down.
On the other side of the map, however, Fusify getting picked out by 3. Faeles, Kalis, and PrettyPriMe surrounding him. The jump comes out. Not quite enough. Xing gonna throw him in the washing machine, if you would. Just buying a little bit of time.
Really, at this point, was just trying to see if he can keep them away from the rest of the team. Fusify
the
was
enemy
probably
Phoenix?
dead to rights. Deathwalker diving the Phoenix 16 minutes into the game and gets away with it, by the way. Deathwalker's an actual nightmare in game number 3.
Yeah, giving Deathwalker Camazotz, I'm going to go ahead and call that a mistake.
Yep.
I wouldn't call it anything else, and I don't think you could, as they're going to head pressure down the Tier 2 tower at 16 minutes. This gold lead is spiraling out of control, coming up on 7.3. You know, it's the same. My math is so bad, I'm going to go ahead and stop calling it out. We're going to wait to see those charts until next time. But 10,000 experience also so potent. The only objectives on the map right now are Pyromancer and Fire Giant. And Freshly Forged, they can make free reign of just about any of it.
The only real good news I'd say for Optimus Gang right now is that Kespainify handled Joshy's aggression in lane a moment ago really, really well. I mean, Joshy was up like 3 or 4 levels at that point. That should have been a free fight for him. And instead, Kespainify turns it around, forces Joshy to stick too long in lane. Zek gets a great kill out of it. And so that does allow Kespainify to catch up a little bit. There's still a huge disparity in solo. Do not want to take away from that one, but it was a 2-headed monster before, and they've shrunk one at least a bit.
Yeah, still level 18. I don't know, you can stop calling him a monster. Shrunk is the right word.
A little
However,
bit.
yeah, just a little bit.
A tiny
the
bit.
beads and the Aegis used by Xfall, on the other hand, that's huge.
It
They
is.
could look to abuse that at any point. There's still 50 seconds till the beads are back up, 70 on the Aegis. If Zek identifies that and rotates over, with the help of Freya, that should be a pretty easy pick.
FaraKrik could be in some trouble. Kalis is just sitting right on top of him, but that's everything expended at this point. There's no further damage. Fusify has grabbed Prime. I don't know if he necessarily had to use beads there, but we've
do
got
if
the
you want the
top-down
kill.
perspective. Hey, you're right. If he wants the kill credit himself, then you got to use the beads there. So Prime
Deathwalker.
drops him and gets the kill, and Deathwalker's just going to continue to cyberbully in the solo lane. Meanwhile, Kespainify in trouble too. 3 members rotating over your
Wow.
lane, and Kespainify turns on the gas pedal, does get at least one to make it 1-for-1, avoids the execute, does Joshy.
Yo, meanwhile in solo though, LeMoGoW falling again to Deathwalker. And I'm not even mad at him anymore, you know. Deathwalker has made very clear what he wants out of this lane, and he's gonna going to take it. Tier 2 tower only can really be contested by Xing and Achilles, but it looks like they'll get there in time. They called the backs, so Deathwalker's going to go ahead and get out of there. But let's see if Joshy does the same. Instead, he's going to stay there with his boy Callus. The rotation's coming in hot.
Deathwalker's got to put this to use now, though, right? I mean, there's only so much that continuing to bully LeMoGoW does for the squad, right? You got to rotate a little bit more with it, but obviously this has been an excellent early game for him. And I mean, we're 20 minutes into this one now. We're full on into the mid game, so Deathwalker can essentially do whatever it is that he would like at this point. He is unanswerable based on just the sheer numbers of the situation.
You know, there's a couple avenues of thought here, right? You can become such a threat in the soul lane to the tower that you force people to come to you, or you can leave and spread your wealth elsewhere. It looks like Deathwalker is the first type, where he's just going to sit there and make 3 people rotate as he is right now. Unfortunately, Gold Fury's not up, so we're not going to get the traditional soul lane call of 4 here, please do gold. Instead, he might get some counter rotations from his team, or they'll just elect to continue farming the map as Deathwalker is, as you said, untouchable.
Zek's been bullied out, not much more he's going to be able to do here. So we kind of turn to elsewhere on the side of Optimus Gang to see how do they stem this bleeding. Kespainify has clearly shown us that he's got some turnaround potential despite the fact that he's so far behind. FaraKrik is fairly even with where PrettyPriMe is as well too, so they're right in this one. And this is something they've done well all set, is that Freshly Forged have been keeping their eyes on these objectives. They're heading right over to that Oni Fury now. And I don't know how anyone from Optimus Gang could defend it when they've got 4 people in right. That's the Oni Fury.
Yeah, that's the classic call that I was talking about earlier. He was just waiting for the gold to come up. He's like, I'll set up camp a little early. And, you know, 4 in right, we get the Gold Fury, and his team will be able to rotate to stop this aggression onto him. You know, he doesn't have the bat out of the hell, so he has to survive a little bit on his own. Girdle popped, but fails. Finds himself in the middle of 3.
Yeah, he sashed into this one. Does get the Windfire wheels off in time to make it to the sky, but I imagine the second that he lands, there will be no escape for him.
Huge damage.
That gets that kill. PrettyPriMe, though, with the drum solo, is able to help take down FaraKrik. Deathwalker gets the kill credit. Prime gets one of his own, but Callus has overstepped a bit. Kespainify gets one. Zek finds one, too, as Deathwalker finally gets shut down, but Joshy was on an island all by himself, now threatening the left side Phoenix. Kespainify has to rotate over, but he is shredding through this Firebird.
It's going to be on whether or not he can avoid this banish, but he loses his 3 instead. He can't win this trade. Oh, no.
No, that's a nightmare scenario. Kespainify melts him and keeps the left side Phoenix standing, though just barely. That's a huge play for Kespainify. 4 members on Freshly Forged end up dropping, so the Gold League now only about 9,000 only.
Only, right?
It just feels like it could have been even more, but this has been a dominant start to this game for Freshly Forged. I want to make no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah, Freshly Forged is doing very well, but Optimus Gang is doing a decent job of responding. I mean, sending 4 over to Deathwalker is the only way you're going to stop him, and even then, you didn't really stop him. He got what he wanted, opened up the opportunity for the Oni Fury. If Freshly Forged groups up around this Fire Giant, Optimus Gang is going to have to defend it. Fire Giant's nearly a death sentence at this point with this lead. And you know what? They've got decent jungle fight out of the Kukulkan. Achilles is going to be able to execute anyone that drops low. And Xing's job, the entirety of this game, from here on out, is to keep Freya alive. If they can do that, they should be able to get themselves back in this. On the other side, if Freshly Forged can go ahead and shut down that Freya, I think that's the crux of Optimus Gang's comeback potential.
I think so, too. I mean, the more that you look at it, the less that Joshy's early lead kind of matters now. Obviously, there was always going to be like a dead end for that experience lead. If you hit that, they're both level 20, but even the item disparity is really not that far out of control. Kespainify is only about half an item behind at this point, and Freya's got most of those relevant ones already finished with the hasten to demonic grip. Deathwalker, though, continuing to fight 3 members in solo, has some backup in the form of Callus, gets some help from Joshy too, but Deathwalker actually has to leave. He took quite a bit of damage. Fusify is starting to get low on the front line too, but it's Prime that needs help. How does he avoid the fatal strike inside the Taiko drums? Doesn't matter. He still ends up falling anyway. Fusify grabs 2. Deathwalker finds the Devourer to get the heal he needs. That makes it 1 for 1, and then takes right to the sky to look for more.
1 for 1. However, Optimus Gang is on the better end of this health trade. You know, Deathwalker's going to be able to heal up, but Pyromancer dropping so fast. Like we said earlier, Merlin is going to decimate these objectives. Nice ult from the Naja, finds the Freya. Is the follow-up there?
It absolutely is. Kespainify took a ton of damage on landing,
but
he's still living through it. Joshy can't survive and ends up falling. That makes it 1 for 1. Faeles gets a kill out of all of that. So does FaraKrik as he finally shuts down that Naja. And Optimus Gang, after the way this early game has gone, they're absolutely still in this one. I mean, how do you not talk about the resilience resolve of this team as they do find this kill to Deathwalker as well. It would have been really easy, I think, to throw in the towel based on how this early game went. And this Optimus Gang roster, man, they keep fighting back into it.
I mean, especially after 7 hours of Smite, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be playing much anymore. But these guys, the utter professionals that they are, not giving up even a little bit. But we have to shout out Freya there. That lifesteal to, you know, land and then be at a quarter health but still fight in a 3, dropping 1 almost on your own and dealing about half health to another. Kespainify, I understand now why they banned out Freya in that first game.
Yeah, Kespainify clearly loves this god, man, and he's able to play it to its maximum potential. And if I can soapbox for a little bit, those F7 guys who don't like to surrender, who are always like, we can still win. I know we can still win. It's a question of the relative value to me of winning this game anymore at this point, and the amount of effort that it would take. And I think that at the end of this day, if Optimus Gang had said to themselves kind of quietly, all right, then I could have totally understood. But these guys don't have that in them, man. I talked about this with Aggro the other day, right? I think there's a little bit of difference in the hunger between people who've been there before already and the people who are still trying to get there. And I love what we're seeing from Optimus Gang. It's not that one is more than the other, but I think that they're certainly different types.
Yeah, Freshly Forged has just about nothing left to prove. Their careers are all so fantastic.
Yeah.
Optimus Gang also has a pretty decent career. However, I mean, you can't match this name presence, and I think Optimus Gang has that hunger to prove that they can hang with the big boys, and it's showing here. The pure grit coming out from these boys. So impressive.
Yeah, man. I mean, in Deathwalker, that run with Rival, one of the better runs that any team has ever had during that stretch. I mean, in Collis, they've got nothing left to say. I'm right there with you in terms of their legacies being relatively cemented. Prime, though, is also cemented, and he's been buried. Zek is the one that gets that one off the execute. They're going to look for Collis here as well. Another one. Double kill for Zek off the Fatal Strike, and Freshly Forged don't seem to have an answer. Optimus Gang are right back in this one. They're going to look for Joshy in the back. At least LeMoGoW is to try and keep the Xbalanque out of the fight. Meanwhile, Fusify trying not to take a bunch of extra damage from Deathwalker, but he still has the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Joshy wasn't ready, and LeMoGoW finds a kill of his own, his first one of the game. Happy to get on the board as they find 3.
What a swing this game has been. I mean, the entirety of this time, Freshly Forged has been in the driver's seat, but Optimus Gang gets one single opportunity off the back of Zek on this Achilles, finds 2 easy picks, solos PrettyPriMe, goes in, executes the ultimate onto the other one. That's so huge, and now they're going to go ahead and move in towards this Fire Giant. That could be it. They could be so huge. There's so much tower on the map left that they could swing this gold lead completely back in their favor, Optimus Gang that is, and move in towards the Gold Fury afterward. There's so many objectives left to do. Fire Giant on 5, looking good. Freya's already hit the late game as well. Optimus Gang might just go ahead and take this.
Dude, I'm really impressed with what we've seen from this team here, as it looks like we've got a quick pause coming out to give us a minute to get that sorted out so we get these players back into the action. But I mean, I have been so impressed with this Optimus Gang squad has done. If for nothing else, then they kind of lost their star player, so to speak, in Johnny from last year that made that Flashpoint team so strong. And yet here they are, showing us they can get it done in a variety of different ways, even against these kinds of odds, against these kinds of players, man. I think they've really made a name with their performance here.
I mean, one star goes down and another one rises.
That's
Zek,
true.
He's certainly got big shoes to fill, but he's filled them. He might have even increased the size a little bit from 12 to 13s. This dude's got huge feet. But continuing forward, they're going to go ahead and continue down the lane. Optimus Gang can look to go towards the Gold Fury. However, Deathwalker's already got this Primal Fury pulled. That's going to go their way. Unfortunately for Optimus Gang, that gold lead isn't going to go entirely in their favor just quite yet. There's so many towers still available, however, they could go ahead and move down. It's whether or not Freshly Forged can group up around these tier 2s and defend properly. They need to group up as a team with the Elephant. Callus finding the shred of defense through his ultimate onto 1 is going to be so clean. However, PrettyPriMe can't be getting picked like he has been.
No, they're going to need PrettyPriMe to be able to stay alive. We saw how much damage the Taiko Drum was doing. I mean, you talked about all early game, right? This is the part of the game that you picked Raijin for. It certainly wasn't the first 15 minutes of the match. So you can imagine for now when he swings even more so than a lot of other these mid-mages can do. But Prime has been under siege, and we haven't given, I don't think, Fusify quite enough credit this set. His Xing Chen play really has been excellent, hasn't he? He's found some really good Whirlwinds of Rage and Steel, constantly setting up for the squad. He's helped make this Optimus Gang squad look as good as they've looked.
Yeah, Xing Shen, I've said it a lot, your slash line isn't always completely reflective of how impactful you are on the game. If I said 1-5-11, it's not that hot. But if you just watch this match, you know that Fusify is popping off. He's finding the CC to get onto these targets so easily. A part of 12 out of 17 kills for his squad. That's huge. Tier 2 tower going to go down uncontested. I imagine Optimus Gang rather is going to move in towards the duo side of the map, try and push that down. I'd like to see them split the push a little bit, however. As I said, Freshly Forged has such good defense that you don't want them all together as a one cohesive unit.
Sure.
If you could even split off Joshy, that would be enough, but instead it looks like they're going to go ahead, back up, drop down this Pyromancer and spend all the gold they just got. 2 tier 2 towers and a Pyromancer might be able to finish off a couple items.
I assume you'd want Zek then kind of on his own for the 1-4 split then on that base siege.
You could either put Zek on his own or you could drop LeMoGoW on his own.
Sure.
If LeMoGoW goes in, he's a tanky target,
Does
but
he
you
threaten
can't
the
be
Phoenix
ignored.
enough by himself, though? I mean, that's the idea with Zek, right? He could take it if you left him over there.
LeMoGoW certainly could. If you take a peek at his build, he's got the Shifter's Shield, or not Shifter's Shield, Gladiator's Shield rather, and the Mystical Mail, so if anyone goes over there to stop him, they would potentially lose their life, so you have to be worried about that. And if no one goes in to contest him, he's got just enough damage with his auto chain as well, being a physical god. He can do the Phoenix on its own as long as he gets the minions in there.
Faeles, feeling the heat a little bit, has to use the ultimate defensively, running away from Fusify, and certainly is he on the run, at least for now. Optimus Gang have flipped this game entirely on its head, though. When you think about the dominance that Joshy and Deathwalker, those side lanes, started this game off with, and how Optimus Gang were able to kind of turn that back around. It's kind of to my point, though. I mean, I do understand the strength of Deathwalker and staying in solo and forcing them to come there, but I do just wonder if maybe they'd spread that around a little bit more and fought more with Deathwalker in other parts of the map. If maybe they could have had a more substantial lead. I mean, they were up 10,000 gold, right? So it's not that they didn't have a lead, but you kind of wonder how a lead like that gets away from you.
I mean, Deathwalker did a good job of bringing the rest of the map to him.
He did.
Once you have
Absolutely.
4 people in your lane, you can't even argue that he hasn't spread the wealth. He's literally accumulated all the debt in his lane, you know? No one else is going to be able to accumulate wealth elsewhere. However, his team, unfortunately, didn't have any objectives to do so. Even though he had everyone over there, it wasn't quite enough. Had he rotated in, maybe they could have looked for some earlier towers, but Optimus Gang out of towers anyway, aside from that one that stands at just a shred
Ironically,
of health. Yeah, in Deathwalker's lane.
Yeah.
I mean, you send 4 people over there, you're going to stop them, right?
Right. It's true. You'll be able to defend it, but they got everything else they were looking for, so.
Now, going forward, it's this next Fire Giant that both teams have to look out for. If Optimus Gang can find themselves onto PrettyPriMe very quickly, this fight could go in their favor, but on the same end, Freshly Forged needs to find their way to Kespainify and actually drop him off the Naja ult. We've seen it twice now where Naja brings him up in the air with the Windfire wheels, and it isn't just quite enough follow-up on landing that they kill him, and with all the lifesteal out of Bancroft's talent, you have to be worried.
Collis has been thrown back to the rest of Optimus Gang. That's an easy kill for them off the setup from Fusify. That is the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel down, though, but taking Collis out of the equation early on is huge, and now Fire Giant should be free for Optimus Gang. I don't think the Freshly Forged are going to come out and contest. And this is what I wanted to ask you anyway. I mean, certainly at this point, Freshly Forged should come out and contest, but now that they've lost Collis since the 4v5, I think I agree with them kind of staying out, just given the objective, falling back for defense.
Yeah, at that point, it's so worrying going in 4v5, especially when they know that Fire Giant's going to burn away so quick, and they were on the other side of the map, so they couldn't rotate in quite fast enough. Callis was unfortunately caught sleeping at the keyboard just a little bit, as Optimus Gang going to go ahead and do the dance of the Phoenix as they move in. 20 seconds left on Callis. This is the best opportunity they're going to get.
They don't have a physical hunter here for the Phoenixes, so that could potentially be a source of frustration for them, but Prime has already been forced out of the fight early. Deathwalker quite low too on the right side. Phoenix is starting to hurt, but this is the priority target. Kespainify has been found by Faeles. It's a huge pick. Right side Phoenix does come down. It costs Faeles his life, but they get probably the most important target. PrettyPriMe is up under the taiko drums, does find a little bit of damage, but certainly not as much as you might expect. But that's actually a good Dharmic Pillars. It cut off the escape. That's huge from Collis. What a play. That means they're going to lose Zek and LeMoGoW, and they're going to cut the siege off at the hill.
Yeah, that's it for your siege, boys. You had one opportunity, you missed it. Eminem would be so disappointed. You're going to have to go back to base with your tail between your legs. Freshly Forged, they can look to go ahead and take down that tower on the right side of the map, but at this point, that gold's not such a huge deal. You're only doing that to strip away the additional defense and health from the Titan. However, 3 dead for 20 full seconds. It looks like they might elect to go for the mid-Phoenix, but Joshy's so low. Oni Fury seems like it's the only real opportunity they have to go forward.
Well, what goes so right for them on that Phoenix defense, man, for Freshly Forged? They turned that around perfectly. I mean, it's got to be because Faeles fights Kespainify instantaneously.
Not only that, so how it went down was Deathwalker blinked in, found Freya in the back, drops her to half health, and immediately uses Bat Out of Hell to get away so she can't lifesteal off of him and potentially kill him, because that's how it would go. He can't win that fight on his own.
Wow.
And after that, Naja swings in with the Windfire Wheels and picks up the kill. That's as clean as you could possibly get it. Unfortunately, Faeles didn't have any follow-up from his team, so they got collapsed upon instantly. Deathwalker lost so much health, forcing Freya down low health, that he couldn't really get back into the fight either. So after that, Optimus Gang didn't really realize that their hyper carry was dead, I guess, and moved in a little bit too far into the Phoenix. And Dharmic Pillar, as you said, pointed out so emphatically, was insane. Found at least 5 ticks onto 2 targets, just shredding their protections and their health at the same time.
There's no way for them, there was no way out for them, for sure, with that Dharmic Pillar placement. So Kalis continues to show us he's an elite level support and can find the Dharmic Pillar placements that he needs to. This game's still virtually a deadlock, only about 3,000 gold separating them. So I asked you back at the beginning of the game, were we closer to a game number 1 or a game number 2 in terms of how this game flow went? And I thought every sign was pointing us towards another game number 2, right? That we were going to get another one of those quick stomps in favor of Freshly Forged, but not this time, man. I mean, a really, really impressive bounce back performance from Optimus Gang now, and they're the ones in the driver's seat.
That's an important point out that we got from Doug there. Voidstone getting picked up on Jingshen. What people don't know is the Voidstone change allows it to take away percentage of defense. Now 20% going to be stripped, or 10% rather, going to be stripped away. That allows you to overcap. That aura doesn't apply to your percent pen cap on your personal god. So you can go over to about 50% as LeMoGoW going to blink in, use his ultimate, find none.
Mid Phoenix, though, is clearly a target. Frenzy has been popped, and Mid Phoenix starting to get shredded, but Kespainify has already been pushed out, so he can't keep up the damage. Had to use the ult, and right there waiting for him was Deathwalker, a man on a mission, and this Freya just can't be saved in the team fights. They do finally get the Mid Phoenix, but Prime makes LeMoGoW pay for it with his life. Tycho Drums catches him on the tail end, but look at all these minions pouring in. They have to defend the base.
2 Phoenixes down. What a hard position to be put in. Fortunately, the right Phoenix is spawning soon, and they've got about a minute until Fire Giant spawns, so they should be able to push these waves out and contest the Fire Giant if they so choose. However, Freshly Forged on the back foot right now, not really able to find any real good footing outside of their own base. Zek doing so well this game as well, finding all these important kills, 9, 3, and 4. I mean, you said it earlier, Johnny was the star player, but I can't imagine he was doing as well as Zek is right now.
He making some big plays for him, so it certainly was Zek-like, wasn't it, in terms of his impact, oftentimes on the out Kwong, but truly you gave the man any hyper carry, and he was making those plays happen. Optimus Gang looking very, very comfortable, though, even with a bit of a different look roster, because it's not just Johnny that's not here for him, and it was Sibby in the solo lane for them for that entire run, or for most of it, rather, and it's LeMoGoW here for them now. So clearly this is a team that's been putting in some work, man. They look ready to play, and Freshly Forged, also a really strong team, clearly just as evenly matched here between these 2 squads.
Freshly Forged has all of their defensive actives available to them. The only things down are Frenzy and Blink rather on the Camazotz. However, beads are down on Merlin on the side of Optimus Gang for a long time, so Freshly Forged can really find the opportunity to find him in the backline, maybe switch the target off of Freya and get Faeles onto this Merlin instead. They might be able to swing this Fire Giant into their favor. Worth pointing out now that Enhanced Fire Giant has spawned, that's going to remove backdoor protections from these Phoenixes and make it so much easier for whichever team gets it to just go ahead and end the game if they get a team fight off the back of it.
Certainly the idea. So you're not as hamstrung if you don't have the minions there with you. You can still get plenty of damage in. So this next Fire Giant fight certainly could be critical. Freshly Forged has really not gotten much of a chance to go on offense since the early game. But the thing is, it's so late into the game now that I don't know that really matters. It's not as if there's not a bunch that they need to go whittle down. It's all 3 Phoenixes exposed. So if they can win one fight here, they can start to look for the end. Kespainify again, though, is in trouble. It's got to be someone's job to give my man some backup in the backline, or they're just going to keep sitting on him. Had to use the ultimate already. That's 3 used on the side of Optimus Gang, 3 used for Freshly Forged, and everyone starts to fall back.
Unfortunately, those Dharmic Pillars from Kalis didn't really find a home anywhere. No one really took any damage, nor did it block off any paths. I saw the thought process. It was good, but forcing out Kespainify is huge. But Freshly Forged took a lot of damage in return, so Optimus Gang going to be the aggressors on this Fire Giant.
The other one's starting it up, popping the Frenzy as well, so this should be a full-on commit, and it's up to Fusify to try and keep as many people out of the house as possible, but Freshly Forged are here. Big autos coming in. I think that was Joshy that stripped it away, and Fire Giants there for the Order team now. They're looking for the fight on the back end as well. Joshy unchecked in the back line, just throwing out autos with the branching bolas, and no one can get to him.
Nice
Deathwalker goes right to the back line, shuts down FaraKrik, easy peasy, and he still wants more. Finally starts to acquiesce, but not before they get Zek as well.
That was so smart from Joshy on the X-Wall. You drop the ultimate, extend the range of your autos, and he just sunk 3 in from max range. No one can see him. I mean, the age-old call-out from every pro player. It's a terrible call. You should never say it, but they all do every single time. It'll make me mad. Your ranked players will say it too. Here's what they say, guys. If you guys want to get a little calm listen.
But you're gonna let me get behind the scenes?
Yeah, this is exactly what you're gonna hear once X-Wall drops his ult. I'm blind. I can't see. Yeah,
blind,
we know. We're all blind. We're all blind, bud. You don't need to say it, but it's said every single time. Fortunately, Joshy finds the Fire Giant, enhanced by the way, and they're gonna barrel down the mid. Smart to do this. They're only doing it because their mid Phoenix is down, so they want to keep these Fire Maidens at bay as well as they pressure. Fusify in the backline might be a little bit caught out.
Fusify certainly could be in some trouble. Thunder Crash lock him down. They're going to the Taiko drums as well. They want to confirm this kill in the Fusify. That
This would be a
ultimate
huge pick.
probably
Nice
more
slow.
for CC immunity than anything else as Fusify continues to run for the hills. But despite all this commitment, this is the thing with Xing. He can be so hard to kill sometimes. Prime keep up this chase though while the rest of the squad just has to defend the base. Does have Deathwalker coming back to help him out too, and Fusify has been a huge thorn on their side if they can get rid of him here.
Yeah, normally you wouldn't want to commit that much time, but since Fire Giant just dropped recently, they have so much more time on that buff that they can really commit to putting Fusify on this 60-minute cooldown, or 60-second. Imagine if he was dead for an hour. That would be way too long.
That'd be a long time, huh?
But they're going to go ahead and move in towards this mid-Phoenix. I imagine it should fall, but the defense on the side of Optimus Gang is still very potent because Kespainify, the biggest target that you need to drop, as well as Merlin still alive, able to drop this Ice Storm outside, keeping all the minions at bay. Looks like no one on the side of Freshly Forged really wants to move in here. If they can find Faeles ult onto either Merlin or Freya, they're set up very well to move into the Titan afterward.
They're going to go ahead and step right on in. All relics are up except for the blink for Fusify, and he's not even alive. Joshy has already taken quite a bit of damage, though, down to half health. Zek punishes Deathwalker in the backline. This siege is over before it even began. Optimus Gang stuffs him and sends him running.
You wouldn't expect Deathwalker to be the first one to drop there, but he got a little bit overzealous. I think he's excited to see the end of the game. Whew.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's why we like Raijin at 41 minutes. That's when he starts to really pop off. Zek, a little bit overzealous as well, gets caught out by the Naja Windfire wheels. Oh no.
That is a bit of a disaster now for for Optimus Gang, rather. Freshly Forged, suddenly with a new lease on life. FaraKrik is going to be able to get this back off in time and rejoin them for this defense. But now they have to fight without their Achilles, and Freshly Forged have to fight without their Deathwalker. This didn't exactly go great for them last time, but it's Phoenix Siege take 2 for Freshly Forged. But Fusify has the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, throws Collis right back in. He takes a ton of damage. They lock him down underneath the mid-Phoenix as well. And PrettyPriMe actually gets the kill in the Fusify, but Kespainify answers back. Prime is the first one that gets cut out. Joshy can't land the shot.
Joshy, no!
And Kespainify gets the better of him. That's a double kill, and Freya puts Joshy in the dirt. Optimus Gang are not going to let him into the base for free.
I can't imagine a Raijin ever jumping into a Freya with all of his abilities down. What was the plan there? Joshy tries to find the return kill, but gets the better end of it, or the worse end of it, I should say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Freya, Kespainify. Yeah, you guys should have banned it, I guess. It didn't work game 1, but, or rather it did, but you should have kept going with it.
Right, should have kept going with the ban. Clearly, Kespainify very, very comfortable on this pick, man, and making it work. I think there's still some spots where you can pick Freya. I mean, we're at a point in Smite where I think we've got so many viable gods that if you got something that you have this much playtime on the way that Kespainify does on Freya, then I can't think of any reason not to come out and play it and trust your comfort picks. And Kespainify is showing it for us today, man.
There's something to be said as well. Freya's always been in and out of the meta, but we don't change that god too much, high res that is. When we do, it's very small. And Freya, you just kind of forget how to play against her, you know? Once a god falls out of the meta for so long, you forget how to play against her, you bring her back, you get that niche pick in the back pocket, you pull her out, and Freshly Forged looks like they have no idea how to respond to it, just walking into the wood shipper that is this Valkyrie.
Well, they had a really good job going for a little while of pressuring Kespainify out of the fights. Those initial Phoenix Sieges for Optimus Gang, that was some of their real struggles with it, was that Deathwalker and Faeles doing a good job of getting back there. But on offense, I think it's a little bit harder for them to make sure that they're the ones getting to Kespainify, because they also had to do so much work tanking the tower and getting past the enemy front line. It's just a lot harder, I think, on offense to do that same job, and Kespainify kind of flourishing on the defense.
Yeah, backpedaling and throwing out your autos is one of the best ways to do it, especially as they just continue to walk forward at you. And Kespainify happy to hold S and left click at the same time, whereas Freshly Forged, the W King, is going to keep going for that. PrettyPriMe in a little bit of trouble, loses beads early in this engagement.
Yeah, Fusify uses the Whirlwind to Radiant Steel relatively early too, but as you said, it gets the Purification beads out. As a result, Primes will be down for another 2 minutes on the back end of that, and that should be carte blanche for Optimus Gang to start looking aggressively. But Deathwalker's in the back, and he's going for FaraKrik, trying to take this Merlin out of the equation early on. Has to use Bat of the Hell largely defensively to try and retreat. PrettyPriMe up onto the Taiko drums, but couldn't find that much damage. But there's the Frenzy popped. Big knock-up coming through as well, so this might be the fight that Optimus Gang were looking for as they start to re-aggress. Collis incredibly low, and all the Freshly Forged are on the run, and Optimus Gang still want more.
Raijin putting some damage back into him as they chase forward, but not quite enough. Optimus Gang gonna keep moving on. Raijin dropping you down. You guys gotta respect PrettyPriMe just a little bit. I know that they're low health and you got the better end of this fight, but at the same time, PrettyPriMe still a 44-minute Raijin.
I wonder if Optimus Gang should rethink the chase at this point. And it initially looked like they might be able to get a couple of good picks, but now they got a bunch of low health bar members, and they should be looking for a clean disengage, a clean reset, I'd argue, and try and make sure they're back into fighting shape, because really it only takes one fight to lose the game at this point, and you just don't want it to happen off the back of a little bit too much over-aggression.
Yeah, PrettyPrime's doing so well just keeping these tanky targets out. Fire Giant has respawned, and I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 more. Being the defender, always better than being the aggressor.
This is such good positioning, though, from Freshly Forged. They can threaten this Fire Giant, which much healthier members than what Optimus Gang have at their disposal right now. They have started up the FG, but Deathwalker isolated in right, taking a bunch of extra damage from LeMoGoW. Does make it back out of there, doesn't have Bat of the Hell, and Freshly Forged now are the ones who have to give up on this Fire Giant, or considering some back. So Optimus Gang are right back into it. Fusify goes right towards PrettyPriMe, forces the Taiko drums since he didn't have beads yet. It has to use the ultimate for the CC immunity, but Fusify does manage to grab Deathwalker and throw him back to the team, but that just puts him right next to Zek, forces Zek out of there. Meanwhile, Fusify is low too, but Kespainify goes aggressive with the ult and manages to find Joshy. That's huge. Fails, catches him with the Windfire wheel, takes him up into the air, and now he's in trouble. They make it 1-for-1, but LeMoGoW gets Deathwalker. Optimus Gang still have the numbers advantage in this 4-for-3 fight, and the flames starting to burn. Fails, ends up falling as well, and Optimus Gang might have finally done enough.
Optimus Gang took this fight so smart, and they're not willing to let it go now. PrettyPriMe falling. That's 4-for-1.
Do you remember how this game started?
I do. It seems like it was so long ago, doesn't it?
I'm just saying that it was such a dominant start for Freshly Forged, man. The game that Deathwalker and that Joshy had throughout like the first 18 minutes or so, I had no doubt that they were going to close this game out in 19 minutes. We'd be on our way out of here. We were thinking 5, guys, right? That's where we were heading. No way, man. A 46-minute slugfest, and Optimus Gang are poised now to take the game. Right side, Phoenix starting to melt. It's just Collis up. He doesn't even have the Dharmic Pillar, so how can he defend up against 4? The Merlin damage starting to rain in. The Titan is swinging away, but I don't think that he can do enough. Titan now well below half, and Optimus Gang here in week 3 of the qualifiers are going to win the finals.
Deathwalker was diving the enemy Phoenix at 19 minutes.
That's nasty.
That's nuts to me that this is how the game ended. Well, I couldn't have predicted it.
No, absolutely not. Not with the way this game started off, right, at the very least. But was there really any big moment where things went wrong? What it really felt like was that Optimus Gang kind of just kept throwing their head at the wall, right, until eventually they were able to start normalizing some of that golden experience back out. They got this game much back closer to parity, and we're able to eventually do exactly what we just saw there, find a pretty big fight in that last Fire Giant defense and come take the game.
So it was really off the back of the hyper carries on both sides. PrettyPriMe wasn't able to bring the same level of pressure as the Freya was.
No, he absolutely was not. Kespainify made some pretty sick plays to try and limit some of Joshy's lead as well in that early game. That's going to do it for us, though. We've talked for 46 minutes. I'm sure you're tired of hearing us. I'm going to get it back over to Dave and Gormizer, the Consortium of Knowledge, I think.
I don't know what that is.
Consortium of knowledge and good looks, and I don't remember what else. Thank you so much, Pitch and Mifflin, for bringing us, after 2 hours effectively of game time, the EU SCC qualifiers for week number 3. The finals are done. And Gormizer, it is not Freshly Forged that take the win, and maybe this shines a light on why it took them so long to finally move into the semis, at
I
least.
would argue, if anything, it shines a light on why I'm so excited for the group stages next week,
it's gonna be
because
fun.
these are the kinds of games you're going to see more or less, because these teams are both coming in, again, a lot of decorated players on either side, Freshly Forged with maybe the higher end of the veteranship, but Optimus Gang held on to that game. There were very small moments where it's just,
Right.
you know, this could have been potentially the end. I mean, as they were pointing out, Deathwalker's diving this Phoenix in 19 minutes. How does it end up going to 46? And it's just resilience more than anything from Optimus Gang, but also little plays where they're picking up kills. Also has to be highlighted where it was the strongest, the jungle and their Freya being able to set up a ton. I mean, executes from this Achilles as well as Fusify being able to set up, Kespainify being able to do so much where he was able to burn down people. And late game, that last fight, I mean, it's a flip a coin and someone wins. He just happened to get Joshy first, and that changed the pace of the game.
Yeah, it's sort of that same resilience that we saw from Optimus Gang in Game 1, we've now seen in Game 3, where they're able to kind of withstand the pressure through and through and through. And they push this one almost to an equal amount of time. And I love that you bring up that Freya, something that was banned out by Freshly Forged in Game 1, let through in Game 2. Didn't work out for Optimus Gang that time. But obviously something to be looked at in the group stages next week for teams that will be playing against Optimus Gang. You have to wonder if maybe this Freya starts to take priority.
It's obviously very potent for Kespainify. He's been playing it for years, and he's been making it work for years, and I think this is a good example of what can happen, even when it has a bad start, but can do so much late game. And this is actually that kill that made the biggest difference, being able to get Joshy to half health, follow up. It doesn't even matter that he dies almost immediately after that. No one cares about that part. It's the 4 minutes, or not even 4 minutes, 40 seconds after that kill that makes the biggest difference, because he was able to get rid of that carry, set up his team for success. And games 2 and 3 started the same way, but game 3, again, the resilience was the key. They made it past that 20-minute mark, and they held on.
Well, in a day where there were no contested sets, we saw a couple quarterfinals, one of the semis, and now onto the finals. In a day where everything was a something zero, we go effectively 2 hours of game time in the finals. Optimus Gang, of course, as you can see on your screen, taking the finals here. I'm very excited to watch them in groups next week, though, because so much of the talk every week has been, hey, Freshly Forged haven't made it. Hey, Freshly Forged haven't made it. It's these big names. Optimus Gang, they cannot be looked over. If you're playing in groups next week, which group do you not want to be in?
Man.
That's a tough question.
Belt Slap, Snake Pit, Cold Llamas, and Optimus Gang is a pretty terrible group to be sitting in, if I'm being honest. Like, if I'm Forever right now, I'm sitting there looking at the names of everyone I'm going up against, and I'm like, well, guys, you know what? We can try. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. There's a lot of big names there, but it's all round robin. It's not just, for Priv's Penguins in this case for NA, can we beat Locked and Coded? It's no, can you beat 4 other people? Like, can you beat enough to put you in the top 3? And I think that's the biggest key for a lot of these players is opening up their mind to that. You just have to win against a very solid team once. And as we've seen, a lot of people can do it. And I think both teams have like a death group right now where it's just like, ooh, that's going to be difficult. There's 4 or 5 people who are vying for the top 3. But it's still going to be possible for anyone to come through and take it. And that's why I'm so excited next week. I mean, we just saw a set that should have been Freshly Forged, but Optimus Gang came out on top. I'm excited for next week.
That's right. It's going to be a blast to watch through next week. It's been 3 weeks of qualifying into the group stages, and we have done it NA, EU, groups A and B for both. They're locked in, so make sure to tune in next Friday and Saturday for the group stages for NA and EU, Friday and Saturday, respectively. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, today's a leap year day, so jump in, take a look at this leap year promo, and see what you can get.